I watched my wife Amy, to whom I had been married for 3 years, in the arms of a high society snob named, believe it or not, Reginald, whom she dated before she married me. I've done a couple of smart things in the past. Now I needed to do something smart too. However, since I didn't have a camera, my cell phone was being repaired, I only watched as the hug turned into cheating. Amy and I were supposed to be at her dad's house for dinner in less than an hour, and I knew that by the time I got my camera out, this photo shoot would be over. However, since Reginald's car was blocking Amy's, I could cause them a little trouble and get a little revenge while still being smart. Wearing gloves for all my related endeavors, I quickly unscrewed the valves on 3 of his tires, deflated them, and then revalved them. I took a rubber hammer from the garage and waited behind a bush. Reginald hurried out of the house a few minutes later. As he swore and knelt by his right front tire, I sneaked up and hit him on the head with a rubber mallet. I didn't hit him hard enough to kill him, but hard enough to incapacitate him. I took the car keys out of Reginald's pocket and threw them as far as possible into the bushes next to our house. Since I was a center fielder in high school and 2 years in college, the keys flew far enough away that they would never be found. I took the credit cards, driver's license, and cash out of his wallet. Who would have thought that a rich snob would carry no more than $28 in cash? I then wiped a small amount of hair, skin, and blood off the hammer with a rag soaked in bleach, returned the hammer to the garage, and placed the rag in a plastic bag. Credit cards and driver's licenses joined the rag in the bag. With the plastic bag in my hand, I ran to my car, which was parked several hundred meters away so Reginald couldn't see it, and drove at high speed to my father-in-law's expensive old house. One of the few working payphones left in America was at the 7-Eleven on the way to me. I parked at a nearby store, took off my jacket, put on a nondescript baseball cap, a sweatshirt, and mirrored sunglasses, then headed to the phone. I gave a teenage girl leaving Reginald's $28 to call 911 and anonymously report a man lying in the driveway of 15 Ridgeway Terrace. I threw the plastic bag containing the rag, credit cards, and driver's license into the dumpster at the 7-Eleven. Then I drove to Dear Daddy's house, arriving 10 minutes ahead of schedule. As you can already tell, I didn't really like Daddy Dearest. He liked me, sort of, but only because I was the best employee at the big insurance company he owned. That is, he liked the money I earned him. Daddy Dearest, his name is Chester Grimes, was and still is a rich pompous ass who always thought Amy was too pretty to marry a middle-class guy like yours, truly, Blake Bristol. In fact, based on morals rather than money, I was too good for Amy and Chester. Chester valued efficiency, so I called Amy on Chester's landline to find out why she wasn't home at the scheduled time. She was exhausted and scared when she answered the phone. "Hello, Amy. Where are you? Your dad is a little angry." "Oh, well, sorry, I'm late. There was a crime in front of our house, and the police are here." "Yes, officer. This is my husband, Blake." "No, you don't need to talk to him, do you?" I heard some arguing in the background, and apparently Amy had her hand over the phone. I heard the phone changing hands then. "This is Detective Burns. Is this Blake Bristol?" "Yes, officer, what happened? Is my wife okay?" "Yes, Mr. Bristol, she's physically fine. However, a man named Reginald Swifton was attacked in your driveway and was taken away in an ambulance, with his car just now being towed away." "What the hell was Reginald Swifton doing in my fucking house?" I shouted in indignation, loud enough for the always correct Chester Grimes to hear. "Your wife didn't really explain this to us. Perhaps you have some information about this?" "What the hell? He's her ex-boyfriend. Maybe he was just stopping by for a quickie. How the hell should I know? I hope they get the crap kicked out of him from this asshole. No need to be vulgar, Mr. Bristol. So you don't know anything about why he might have been in your house or who attacked him?" "No. But when you find this guy, tell him I'd like to buy him a beer. Can you take my wife to the hospital and take a swab to prove they had sex?" "Not unless she wants to go," Burns replied. "What if it was rape and she's too afraid to tell you? Can't you force her to take the test under these circumstances?" I asked feverishly. "Unless she says she was sexually assaulted, I'm sorry, but I can't," Burns replied. Could you at least take detailed photographs of her to show whether she was attacked? For example, are there any bruises or bleeding? I beg. Yes, we can do that, Burns replied. Thank you. Could you please put a potential crime victim back on the phone, Detective Burns? Yes, although I would like to talk to you a little more tomorrow. By then, my cell phone will be returned to me. Call me then to make an appointment and I will come to you, I told him, and then gave him my cell phone number. Hi, Blake, honey, Amy began to say. Stop talking nonsense, Amy. I want you to go to the hospital immediately, have Detective Burns take you, and have a swab taken to see if Reginald raped you. No. Where did you get this idea, Blake? Well then, go and prove to me that you didn't have sex with him. How can you accuse me of treason at such a moment? Amy cried. What time is it? So the bastard got attacked. I don't give a damn about him, and you shouldn't either. I shouted, then paused for emphasis before continuing. Let's do this, honey. Either you get swabbed and the police will witness it before you clean yourself up, or I file for divorce. Fuck you, she screamed. But before she could say anything else, I hung up. Chester was deathly pale and angry. What was it? He roared. Well, Chet, I replied. He hated being called Chet. Your daughter cheated on me with that asshole Reginald Swifton, so I'm divorcing her. When Chester recovered from the shock, he muttered, You can't talk to me like that or talk about my daughter like that. I have to fire you. The phone rang. I knew it was Amy, so I just picked it up and then threw it back. Could you put this in writing? I asked excitedly, taking a pen and notepad from the kitchen table and handing it to him. Even if it breaks my heart, if I don't make any more money for a pompous man like you, I'll somehow survive being fired. Chester faltered a bit, including muttering something about how shamelessly ungrateful I was and how glad he would be to get rid of me, as he wrote, Blake Bristol fired as of today, dated and signed with his name. Thank you, I said, and then walked out the door, clutching my pink paper to my chest as my ringing phone provided the background music. Okay, I know you're a little confused by my actions and think I might be crazy. Perhaps a little more information will help clear things up. The two smart things I referred to at the beginning were the terms of the prenuptial agreement Amy and I had, and the employment contract with Chester's company, signed at the same time as the prenuptial agreement. I got Amy and Chester to agree to add one clause to each of these contracts. I entered into a marriage contract on a mutual basis. That is, if either of us physically harms the other or has sex with anyone else during the marriage, then the sanctions specified in the marriage contract will come into play. In my case, I would receive $500,000 from her trust fund before we split our remaining assets 50-50. In her case, she would receive 85% of the assets. If there were children, fortunately we didn't have any, the injured party would have a with custody. I have never even touched Amy in anger, and I have never cheated on her, despite all the opportunities to do so. With respect to my employment contract, if I was fired or demoted in a manner that reduced my earnings or responsibilities by 10% or more, the non-competitive provisions of my employment contract were void. I was not in the best position to divorce Amy for infidelity and get what was due under the prenuptial agreement because I did not have photographs or records that would constitute definitive proof. However, I suspected her for a year and collected a significant amount of admissible evidence. That is, I really had indirect evidence of her betrayal long before the incident with Reginald. My friend and middle-class lawyer Ron Botts told me that the circumstantial evidence gave me a good chance if we found the right judge, and that we could probably gather some more useful information during the investigation. Ron also advised me on what to do and what not to do regarding my imminent divorce. I have been advised to avoid closing accounts, transferring money or securities, canceling credit cards, etc., until we get a court order to maintain records and freeze assets. To act rashly would look bad in the eyes of the judge and would be detrimental to our case. As soon as I left Chester with steam pouring out of my ears, I bought a burner cell phone and called Ron's office. "Why are you still there at 7 p.m. on Friday?" I asked. Serving helpless assholes like you? He laughed in response. What's happened? I explained the situation to him, but only from the moment I got to Chester's house. Ron had simple advice. Don't come home tonight. Go to the hotel, get receipts, and be seen on their CCTV cameras. Tomorrow morning, a police officer with a video camera will escort you back home and leave the recording device there. In the meantime, I'll check on Reginald. I will begin divorce proceedings on Monday. I did as I was told. The next morning, Saturday, the policeman and I went to my house where Reginald had sex. I entered the side door and then into the living room. I made a fuss and shouted, Amy, I'm here to pick up some things and then leave. Amy quickly went down the stairs. Why the hell do you start accusing me of cheating and forcing my father to fire you? You ass. Did you take a vaginal smear? I asked sarcastically. Hell no. She started screaming before I cut her off. Then we have nothing to talk about. I'll take my clothes and leave. She was so focused on telling me off that I'm sure Amy didn't see it, but he did get good photos and videos of her face and exposed skin that showed no cuts or bruises. I closed and locked the bedroom door and, ignoring her knocking and screams, packed my clothes and valuables into 2 suitcases. I checked the sheets for stains, but she was smart enough to change them. She probably burned them or soaked them in bleach. After gathering my things, I walked past her without saying a word and out the front door. I filmed her with my telephoto lens from the car as she screamed on the porch outside as I left. While Amy and I were upstairs, he installed a long battery recorder in the kitchen. How did the photos and videos turn out? I asked when we drove away. Fine. It's easy to see that there were no marks on her. Placing a voice-activated voice recorder turned out to be a brilliant solution. Later that day, we overheard her talking to one of her friends, Lila Castle. Amy forced Lila to hit her in the face and arms and caused small cuts to her arms and neck. After Lila did what Amy asked, they both went to the clinic to document the cuts and bruises and take pictures. While Amy and Lila were at the clinic, the private investigator and I returned to my house to pick up all the other things I needed and to pick up the recorder. Ron called it perfect. On Monday, we filed a lawsuit for adultery. By the end of the week, Amy had filed a counterclaim for physical abuse. Around the time Amy was filing for divorce on Monday, after I had cleaned out my office and picked up my cell phone from the repair shop, I went to see Detective Burns. Where were you when the Reginald Swifton thing happened, Mr. Bristol? This was his first question after exchanging pleasantries. It sounds like you're treating me like a suspect, I said, crossing my arms over my chest. Well, we do have evidence linking you to the scene, he continued. Well, then you should arrest me, because I'm done talking to you and I want to invite my lawyer, I said decisively. Of course, I knew he didn't have any proof. Is this really how you want to play it out? You will look guilty, Burns continued. I thought that when I asked for a lawyer, you wouldn't be able to ask me another question, but you just did. Either arrest me or I'm leaving, I said. I stood up and headed towards the door. We're not done yet, Burns continued without any boasting. Only with my lawyer, I said, handing him one of Ron's business cards and leaving. I never heard from him again, and neither did Ron. I do wish that, at the time the suit and counterclaim were filed, I had been aware of Ron's conversation with another private investigator, Dan Drake, who was also a friend of Ron's. My anxiety would have been greatly eased, and I would have understood Ron's unshakable confidence in our cause. The conversation between Ron and Dan took place 2 days after the counterclaim was filed. Ron only told me about this after the trial. Dan, I don't want you to tell me anything of substance that you know, but I need answers to a couple of questions. Damn it, Ron, if I can help, I will, Dan replied. Dan, does the name Amy Bristol mean anything to you? Yes, it is. Do you have any clients for whom you work that are interested in Amy Bristol's activities? Yes, they were, Ron. Can you tell me their names? I'll contact them and call you back, Ron. Dan called Ron a few hours later. Their names are Elizabeth Moore and Jamie Watkins, and don't tell me anything else, Dan. Would any clients want you to oversee a divorce case in which Amy Bristol is a party? Haha. Okay, Ron. Yes, I'm sure at least one of them will. I'll tell you the date, Dan. Thank you. Ron finished. While this conversation was happening, I was apparently interviewing with Chester's biggest competitor, who hired me at the same salary that Chester's company was paying me, and with a commission almost twice as much. Since there was no way for me not to compete with Chester's company, I contacted all of my old clients within a week, and within a month, almost 90% of them had transferred their business to my new company. I could afford to pay Ron's and the private investigator's bills. Additionally, between the start of the divorce process and the trial date, more than 80% of the time, I beat Chester's company for new business when we met face to face. Ron filed for an asset freeze when he filed for divorce. This was satisfying. Neither Amy nor I could touch our money except for attorney's fees and other court costs, an award granted by the court, or as a result of a special request that the other party either agreed to or ordered by the court. There were no cash outs, cancellations of credit cards, transfers of money from joint accounts to individual accounts, sales of shares, cancellation of insurance policies, or raiding of safe deposit boxes. I thought the appointment of a judge was unfortunate, but Ron assured me that it would be good for us in the long run. Judge Matt Moore presided. He was the newest and youngest judge on the family court. He was very energetic, confident, and handsome, with a suspicious prejudice against us. I met Matt Moore just once, at a 4th of July party at his next-door neighbor's house about a month before he was confirmed as a judge. I remember because Amy and I had a fight that night because she got drunk and disappeared from me. Moore spoke very highly of my father-in-law, Chester Grimes, in a brief conversation Moore and I had that evening. I asked Ron, why did we forego a jury trial if you suspect that because of his relationship with Chester Grimes, Moore is prejudiced against us? Ron just smiled. Who is the lawyer here, you or me? I know what I'm doing. I want to get for you more than what is provided for in the marriage contract, he answered very confidently. Ron explained the pre-trial procedure to me. During the investigation, we would have to reveal what we knew and use it as evidence. The only exception was that if something would be used only for impeachment, that is, to call into question the credibility of a witness or a party, then we did not have to disclose the evidence or any witness who would present it. Ron did not tell me about his conversation with Dan Drake, and in fact, he did not have any discoverable information based on that conversation, which is why it was not disclosed to Amy's lawyer, Amanda McAfee, earlier. When we answered Amy's attorney's questions under oath, it was not surprising that Lila Castle was brought forward as a witness to my alleged attack on Amy. It was alleged that the attack happened on the Saturday after the incident with Reginald, when the private investigator and I came to my house to pick up my things. Ron immediately noticed Lila's testimony before we had to respond to Amy's inquiries about the attack. Lila's videotaped testimony, which Amy and I both attended although we never spoke to each other, took place on Monday. After Ron pointed out the date of the alleged attack to Lila, he struck. So, Miss Castle, you are absolutely certain that you witnessed the attack shortly before you accompanied Mrs. Bristol to the clinic for treatment that Saturday, correct? Yes, I'm sure, she said, trying to look confident, but she couldn't. You didn't injure Mrs. Bristol yourself, did you? Ron continued. Lila and Amy's jaws dropped, and Amanda McAfee looked puzzled. Of course not, Lila answered hesitantly. I am going to play for you an audio recording that an independent witness swears was recorded on that Saturday after Mr. Bristol left his home. Tell me, do you recognize these voices? When Ron played the tape, everyone on the other side of the table turned ashen gray. When this was done, Ron asked, do you recognize the voices? Aren't you and Mrs. Bristol talking about giving her a bruise and then lying about how Mr. Bristol did it? You must have set this up, Lila sobbed. We'll have a voice expert compare your voice in today's testimony with what's on the tape, and then we'll send the case to the prosecutor's office for perjury charges. These are all the questions I have. Not surprisingly, Amy's lawyer had no objection. 2 days after Lila's testimony, Amanda McAfee decided to withdraw the counterclaim and asked the court to enter a consultation order to stay the case for 2 months until the parties seek the services of a certified conciliation mediator. Ron strongly opposed this proposal. During oral arguments, he said, Your Honor, They filed the counterclaim in bad faith, and we want to be able to put that on the record at trial because it undermines Mrs. Bristol's credibility. Moreover, my client has no interest in reconciliation, and until the case is closed, he loses interest on the $500,000 he intends to recover from Mrs. Bristol. In a show of bias, Judge Moore granted Amy's motion but threw us a bone. If reconciliation fails and Mr. Bristol prevails in court, then Mrs. Bristol will pay 2 months' interest at the rate of 4% per annum on any money to which Mr. Bristol is entitled, in addition to the division of assets. Ron warned me to follow the instructions in the order during the conciliation process so as not to give the court any reason to sanction me. He told me not to swear, no matter how much I wanted to. Is the word bitch a curse word? I asked him. No, but don't use it. Call her a blatantly unfaithful wife? Ron replied with a smile. Not surprisingly, 2 days before my scheduled counseling session, I received an email from Chester Grimes. I refused to answer his phone calls or even listen to his messages. The letter was very conciliatory and offered me a return to my old job with double my salary and commission. I saved it in case Ron could use it as evidence, but I never responded to it. Lawyers were not allowed to attend the consultation, only the parties. Amy arrived for her counseling session dressed to kill. She is a sexy, sensual woman, and her wardrobe, makeup, and hair were impeccable. If I didn't hate her, I would gladly engage in her pleasure. Since the order said nothing about clothing, I showed up in cut-off jeans, sandals, and an old college t-shirt with holes in it. Amy hated the shirt and tried to throw it away twice. Plus, I hadn't shaved in 2 days, and my hair was disheveled and unwashed. Amy took one look at me and knew it was over, but she tried anyway, no doubt motivated by only $500,000. Mr. Bristol, I'm surprised by your appearance, said the consultant. The order didn't say anything about clothing, and that's how I decided to show up. I'm sorry if this doesn't meet with your approval, I replied, trying to avoid a sarcastic tone, but probably failing. The mediator then resumed the session, while Amy and I remained silent. Even though I was the applicant, she allowed Amy to speak first. Can't I, as the plaintiff, speak first? I asked. As a mediator, I can determine the order of the discussion, he retorted, obviously still disturbed by my appearance. Amy was a great actress. She told me how much she loved me and wondered why I was suspicious of her. She talked about all the wonderful times we had together and cried where it was appropriate for dramatic effect. This took a good half hour. Either the mediator was moved by Amy's performancy, or he was trying to settle the matter, because as soon as Amy finished, she turned to me with misty eyes and said, Mr. Bristol, what would you like to say to your dear wife, who has just bared her soul? She's not such a good wife. She is a serial cheater and has been grossly unfaithful to me, as well as a liar, as her story of me beating her clearly shows. Her entire performance was an act in an attempt to save $500,000. I don't know if she ever loved me, but I don't care. I don't love her. In fact, I hate her, and I want to get a divorce as quickly as possible so I can move on with my life. The mediator and Amy were shocked. During the remainder of the session, I briefly answered questions or responded to statements from both the counselor and Amy. The only response of more than 4 words I gave for the rest of the session was when a tearful woman said, "You didn't even give me a chance to explain why Reginald was there before you freaked out. And I told you in no uncertain terms to take a swab to prove you didn't have sex with him, or to accuse him of rape, and that if you didn't, I would divorce you. It was your choice. Live with it." It was not received very well. As a last desperate gesture, the mediator said, "Mr. Bristol, I want you to stand up, go to Amy, and hug her to see if this awakens any feelings in you." I quickly replied, I didn't see any requirement in the order that I had to hug her, and the thought of even touching my flagrantly unfaithful future ex-wife gives me goosebumps. Since I don't want to lose my breakfast, I declined. Amy jumped out of her chair, started swearing at me as loudly as she could, and probably would have hit me if the mediator hadn't intervened. ever see Reginald Swifton in your home while you were married and before filing for divorce? Basically, I'm honest but not stupid. After several months of pre-trial proceedings, during which Judge Moore demonstrated his bias whenever possible while still defending the record for appeal, the trial was scheduled for 2 months after the trial was adjourned. Ron didn't testify to Amy. For strategic reasons, he told me. However, he had Amy's answer during interrogations, where she swore that she had never had sex with another man during the marriage and before filing for divorce. During the trial, we presented our circumstantial evidence of adultery by 3 o'clock on the first day, because we had sufficient evidence to deny the motion for directed verdict. Despite how biased Moore was, he knew his decision would be overturned on appeal if he granted it. Now it is the defendant's turn to present her side of the story. Of course, Amy's main witness was Amy herself. Under oath, Amy denied ever having sex with another man while she was married. Judge Moore looked a little embarrassed at one point, but for the most part, he ate out of her hand and overruled almost all of Ron's objections. When she finished, it was almost 5 o'clock. So Judge Moore ordered the hearing to continue at 9 the next morning. As we were gathering up our papers to leave, a guy walked up to Ron with a big smile on his face. When Ron saw him, he smiled back. I saw this guy sitting in the courtroom during Amy's testimony, but I didn't know who he was. "Blake, this is Dan Drake, my friend," Ron said. I shook Drake's hand with a puzzled expression on my face. "I have some information for you, Ron," Drake said, his smile growing even wider. "This is due to the refutation of Amy Bristol's testimony. Let's go to my office and order dinner." Ron chuckled as the three of us walked out. In Ron's office, Drake showed us one DVD of Amy naked satisfying James Watkins. Drake said he had another DVD, but Ron stopped him from showing it to us. "I just want you to testify about the release date of your second DVD. If this is what I think, but I don't know for sure. I don't want to see it now, and I'm sure it will never be shown in court." At precisely 9 o'clock the next morning, Ron began his interrogation of Amy. After asking her about Reginald's visit on the day I witnessed them having sex, he asked, "Do you know a man named James Watkins?" "Yes," she answered hesitantly. "And his wife, Jamie Watkins?" "Yes." "When did you first meet him?" "I do not remember exactly." "Wasn't it at a party at your father's house 18 months ago when he came there with his wife Jamie?" "Maybe." "Didn't he move to town and start working for your father a month before?" "I guess so." "Well, was it like that or wasn't it? Should we call him or Mrs. Jamie Watkins to testify?" Ron growled, his pleasant demeanor suddenly disappearing. After an awkward pause, Amy stammered and said, "Yes, now I remember. It was at that party about a year and a half ago that I first met him." "So you never met him before you got married, did you?" "No," Amy answered hesitantly. "Mrs. Bristol, have you ever had sex with Mr. James Watkins?" No. "You keep accusing me of cheating," Amy whined, and then burst into tears. "Your Honor, at this time I would like to play the DVD. Due to its nature, I request that it only be displayed on the monitors at the lawyers' tables, in the dock, and in the witness box, and not on the main courtroom monitor." "Very good, Mr. Botts. Bailiff, please push the right buttons to make this happen," Judge Moore said. After a pause and a nod from the bailiff, Ron pressed play on the DVD player. Amy screamed and then covered her mouth when she saw what appeared on the screen. "Is this video of you and Mr. Watkins having sex, Mrs. Bristol?" Ron asked after he had played about 60 seconds. No. It's a fake copy. Turn it off," Amy sobbed. "There are no further questions, Your Honor. If the defendant has no questions, I would like to call Dan Drake to testify." "No questions," Amanda McAfee said, wincing as Amy left the witness stand in tears. "However, I have an objection. This video was never provided to us during the investigation and should not be used for any purpose. Actually, Your Honor, I only found out about this around 7 o'clock last night, but that doesn't matter. The DVD and the testimony of Mr. Dan Drake who will attest to its authenticity, are being used only to refute Mrs. Bristol's testimony and not for any other purpose. Judge Moore was uncomfortable, but he had no choice. The objection is rejected. With proper authentication, I will allow the DVD to be used for rebuttal purposes only. Dan Drake was a confident and unflappable witness. After Ron made everyone aware of his qualifications, he confirmed the authenticity of the DVD, explaining that he filmed the video at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Watkins with the permission of his client, Mrs. Jamie Watkins. It showed James Watkins and Amy Bristol having sex while she was married to Blake Bristol and before the divorce papers were filed. Judge Moore now looked extremely confused, especially when Ron asked Drake, "Do you have another video of Mrs. Bristol having sex with another married man while she was married to Mr. Bristol?" "Yes," Drake answered affirmatively. "What is the release date for this video, Mr. Drake?" "July 4th, 2012, Drake answered, looking directly at Judge Moore. Judge Moore interrupted. "I need to meet with the lawyers and parties in my office right now." When we entered the courtroom, the judge took off his robe and sat down thoughtfully. Finally, he spoke. "Miss McAfee, your client, Mrs. Bristol, appears to have committed perjury. I may be required to bring this to the attention of the district attorney, and of course comment on it if I write an opinion. I'm going to adjourn the trial for 24 hours. I suggest that you negotiate a settlement during this time." Amy looked down at the floor, and Amanda McAfee looked shocked, but resigned. "If you don't do this, you won't like what happens next," Moore continued. "Unless someone has a very compelling reason to present additional evidence, I rule that the testimony in this case is sealed. I will also file a motion to have the record sealed." By 4 o'clock that day, Amy had written me a check for $500,000 plus interest, paid all of Ron's fees and disbursements, and signed a document agreeing to the divorce and giving me 60% of our assets, rather than the 50% specified in the prenuptial agreement. That extra 10% was just my little bonus. In exchange, we settled the case with prejudice, promised not to bring Amy's perjury to the attention of the DA, and filed a joint petition for dissolution of marriage due to irreconcilable differences, and sealed the record. That same day, Judge Moore excitedly approved the settlement, granted the divorce petition, and sealed the record. When Ron, a few others from his office, Dan Drake, and, surprisingly, Jamie Watkins, and I, went out to dinner to celebrate that evening, I whispered a question to Ron. Why was Moore so insistent that this case be completed and the protocol sealed? "Of course, I don't really know anything about this," Ron grinned. "Otherwise, as a judicial officer, I would have to file a motion to remove Moore and report it to the Ethics Commission. However, I'm willing to bet he had a personal interest in the matter," Ron said, his grin now turning truly devilish. After thinking for a few seconds, I decided that I didn't need to ask any further questions. 4 months later, I read that Judge Matt Moore and his wife Elizabeth Moore had been granted a divorce due to irreconcilable differences. The details weren't made public, but I noticed that while driving around town, Judge Moore was now driving a 5-year-old Ford, whereas when I met him at a July 4th party in 2012, he was driving a new Mercedes. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. The last few months have been a very heavy line. My wife, Catherine, was having an affair with a coworker, and it seemed like everyone in the world knew about it, but no one had the courage to say anything. I was just as guilty as everyone else. For some strange reason, I was hoping it would just end, and that would be it. We'll return to normal. Of course, it was a fantasy, but you can't go back to the way things were. We were married for 19 years and had 3 children. Rob was 18 and the eldest. Catherine was pregnant when we got married. A year later, we had Donna, and the next year, Darcy came along and I had a vasectomy. They were good guys, and until recently, we didn't have any problems with them. Needless to say, The problem with the children was caused by their mother's sloppy activities. For the past 3 years, Catherine has worked in the claims department of a large insurance company. When she started working overtime, several evenings a week, the kids and I quickly noticed. She got a new hairstyle and went to the gym. Her underwear drawer became a little sexier, but I never really enjoyed it. Donna and Darcy saw her having lunch with her department head at a prestigious restaurant, but she never mentioned it. In desperation, I decided to follow her like a love-struck puppy. Her trips to motels with her lover were frequent and brazen. Although I did not see the need for this, I still also documented the times and dates of several of their meetings. As the affair dragged on, the family began to fall apart. All this happened without any conversation. The children were angry with their mother for deceiving her. The children were angry at me because I did not confront their mother and tried to control myself. I was too stupid to understand that waiting was hopeless. No, the family only gathered for dinner. Even then, it was harder bad test. There was practically no talking, and when each of the children finished eating, they quietly disappeared, usually leaving the house before bed. John, I'm not going to tolerate this attitude from children for long. If you don't do something to fix it, I will. I will take care of it. You've been saying this for a month now. I don't know what came over them. Why did they suddenly start acting like little children? Oh, that's no problem. The problem was how everything settled. I think we're done now. It will work out. Are you going to let me in on this? Or is this some kind of big deal? My secret? No secret. Tomorrow, I'm moving in with my parents. Catherine was not happy about this news. She stopped clearing the table and sat back down with a strong, decisive slap. Oh, what am that mouth? Are you talking, John? You can't commute from Freckville, and I can't take care of this place and the kids on my own. How can this solve anything? On the very part, Catherine, you don't come. I don't want to worry about the children. They will come with me. I didn't expect to see frowning eyebrows and a stiff lower lip, but in fact, this could have been expected. With her elbows on the table, my loving wife leaned forward and looked into my eyes. There is no way in the world you will leave this house with my children. What makes you think you can do it? Can you get away with such stupidity? We decided so. Catherine sighed irritably, stood up, and began clearing the table again. She muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't make out anything. Throwing the last of the china into the sink, she turned around. Why? Why is this happening? I think the reason is that they are tired of being embarrassed. Oh, what that mouth? Are you talking? This mainly concerns your affair with Brian Masterson. You flaunt your infidelity to such an extent that the whole family knows about it. You showed no respect to your children or to me. What? Are you going to deny it? Are you telling me you don't spend several days a week having sex in different motels? Are you saying that I don't understand this? I decided I didn't want to continue this conversation anymore. There were a lot of things I could have thrown at her, but I didn't have the courage. I pushed back my chair and left the room. Catherine stood at the sink with her hand on her hip. I noticed a defiant expression on her face, as if she was pleased that I mentioned her infidelity. I got the feeling that she was everything this time. She teased me to have a reason to stop carrying around feelings of guilt. There was a lecture expected, which I had no intention of hearing this evening. I didn't have the slightest desire to hear that I forced her to seek solace elsewhere because I was a mediocre husband and a bad lover. Of course, I could tell her that. This doesn't give her the right to cheat on me. But in the end, I'm everything. I'll be there anyway. Guilty. I knew Catherine, and I knew that she planned everything in advance about what I was going to say. My best game was to not play at all. What about your job? I'm leaving. I heard her shout out my name as I walked out the door. I had no idea where the children were. All of their clothing and personal belongings were loaded into Rob's Subaru Outback. The van had traveled over 100,000 miles, but I figured it wasn't me of resources left for 100,000. All my clothes and personal papers were in the back seat of the Jeep. Returning home, Catherine did not notice any of this. We all agreed that whatever we couldn't carry on the first trip, we could come back later. I was sure that Catherine was inspecting the house when I left. There was no turning back at this point. I decided I should call Donna. Donna always controlled herself. Rob was the oldest and the man, but he had no problem letting Donna call the shots. Donna, this is Dad. Are you still at home? No, I'm on my way to the motel now. I think it will be better if you guys find some place to stay for the night. Can you contact Rob? No problem. Darcy and I will stay with Betsy Cooper. I don't know what Rob is up to, but I think I can contact him. Okay, meet me tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Waffle House on Lancaster Pike. From there, we can head to Frackville. Dad, was Mom angry? I think yes. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. Oh, after you call Rob, maybe it would be better to turn off your phone. After checking into the Desca Motel, I turned off my cell phone. I had just finished taking a shower when there was a knock on the door. I opened it, expecting to see an angry Catherine, but instead saw Rob smiling. There weren't many motels in the city. By 7 o'clock the next morning, we were already on our way to the coal regions. Catherine and I never got around to discussing my work situation. It didn't matter because I was now unemployed. The most normal thing to do in such conditions is to quietly hide as much cash as possible. If I were to file for divorce, I would have to go through the process of declaring assets and coming up with an equitable distribution. I decided what to do with everything in my mouth. Nobody likes to see their credit go belly up, but under the circumstances, it seemed like a good idea to me. If I don't work, the kids can qualify for a lot of grants and other benefits when I do. It's time to go to college. I want to make sure they get everything they need, but it may not work out. Living with my parents will also cover many other normal expenses. I was pretty sure that Catherine wouldn't wait long to file for divorce. I'll probably agree to anything she will demand just to get rid of this marriage. She couldn't get much since I didn't have a job, and the kids wouldn't go with her even if they were ordered to. All I could do now was sit and wait. It was great to be back in my hometown. The last time I lived there was before I left for college. After graduating, the closest place I could get half a decent job was in Reading. Catherine was originally from Baltimore, so she didn't mind being just a few hours away from home. We got married before my last semester at Penn State. Catherine never finished due to pregnancy. She has never had the desire to study. I think she came to leave her parents and find a husband. One way or another, I won the marriage lottery. My prize was 3 wonderful children and a bitch for a wife. Of course I had regrets, but I'm not one of those who lived past. I didn't know what was mine. The past will catch up with me so quickly. Since I had many old friends in the area, getting a job wasn't so difficult for him. I hid as much money as possible so that it wouldn't fall into Catherine's hands. She has nothing that will happen until she starts getting divorced. You guys are so under the circumstances, I think they felt wrong. I didn't leave Catherine because the kids wanted me to, but they seemed to feel the same way. Mom and Dad were reluctant to take money from us. I don't think they needed it. They didn't want me to feel like a slacker. Catherine called 2 weeks later and asked if I was going to pay the mortgage. I answered no. 2 weeks later, she called me and said that her car insurance needs updating. I gave her the same answer. Catherine tried to start a conversation related to cheating. She tried to be apologetic and sincere, but she succeeded. I listened patiently as she explained how her friendship with Masterson developed into a full-fledged sexual relationship. She assured me that he was just a physical attraction and nothing more. After a few minutes, she realized how ridiculous everything was and fell silent mid-sentence. I didn't answer. I'm really sorry, John. I don't have a good excuse for what I did. I'm truly sorry. After that, she stopped calling. I guess my wife finally realized that the marriage was impossible to save and filed for divorce. She had a mortgage and a car to pay, as well as all utilities. Of course, I was obligated to pay these bills, but I felt that since thousands of other fatally beaten fathers avoided similar things, I could too. It was worth the risk. I signed the papers and power of attorney to sell the house as soon as I received them. Now, it was only a matter of time. Catherine asked for nothing more than a home. After closing costs and commissions, she won't get much. Rob was getting all his college papers ready. Unfortunately, Rob had other pressing issues. The past is coming back to haunt me, and Rob is at the center of the problem. Dad, I have a little problem. I suppose you think I can help you? A few weeks ago, I met a girl and I really like her. At least the conversation started on a high note. Rob dated several girls in high school, but was never serious about them. It was nice to hear him admit that he could have a potentially long-term relationship. I'm sure it's not about pollination methods. No, but I received an unexpected blow. I first met her mother, and as soon as I introduced myself, she got upset. When I'm gone, she told Shannon that she didn't want to see me anymore. She had never done this with any of Shannon's previous boyfriends. Her mother gave her no explanation. I think Shannon was a little mad at her mom because she finally agreed to back off, but only if you talk to her. Let me clarify. This girl's mother will allow you to date, but only if she talks to me first. That's all, and that's it. Shannon said nothing like this had ever happened before. I think I'll find time. You are everything. Arrange it and let me know where and when. Rob left the room with a big smile, and I sat and thought about why this woman should meet me before approving their relationship. In the evening, Rob answered from us to Shannon. It was an old house located next to the main street. The house was badly in need of painting, and the slate sidewalk should have been leveled long ago. Shannon waited at the front door and opened it anxiously when we arrived. "Hello, I'm Shannon." She was cheerful and sweet. I understood why Rob was so attracted to her. "We are very grateful to you, Mr. Ritchell. I'm very sorry that I have to invite you like this, but Mom insisted. I hope you don't mind. Do not worry about it. I'm sure we can do anything to settle as soon as possible." "Mother, Mr. Ritchell is here." My heart sank. My old high school college sweetheart, Abby, walked in. "Hello, John." "Hello, Abby." The words came out of my lips automatically. There was an awkward silence. Rob quickly. "Do you guys know each other?" She didn't take her eyes off me. "Your father and I went to school together." Shannon seemed happy about the new situation. "Well, that should make things easier, right? I have a fresh pot of coffee ready. I think we'll be more comfortable in the kitchen." I obediently followed her to the back of the house. When I sat down, she turned to the children. "You two better wait in the living room for a while. Turn on the TV and don't be a fool. I'll call you in a few minutes." Abby went to get coffee, and I began to reminisce. We were in the fall semester of our senior year at the University of Pennsylvania. Abby and I had a fight because I didn't want to go home for Thanksgiving. She left without me. I know, I was having fun, got drunk, and was arrested for hooliganism. My parents were unhappy, and Abby refused to talk to me when she returned. She's still mad at me when the semester ended, and she went home alone for Christmas. My parents were unhappy with me, so I stayed on campus for the holidays. That's when the bad news came. It was between Christmas and New Year when Catherine approached me at the student union. According to her, during one of my drunken nights in the student dormitory, we had sex, and now she was pregnant. I didn't want to aggravate the situation with my parents. Without thinking too much, we drove to Gretna Green that same day and got married. I told my parents only in the spring, after finishing school. Abby found out about the marriage when she returned to school after several years of studying and immediately dropped out. I don't know if she ever finished. "You're daydreaming." Her words woke me up when a mug appeared in front of me. She was 20 years older than when I saw her for the last time, and that's why it was more beautiful. My brain was racing feverishly, making comparisons. "I'm really sorry. I wasn't ready for this. I'll come to you." I'm trying to let my brain come to its senses before I become worth anything. Abby was always easy to talk to, and I always felt comfortable with her. I don't even remember what we argued about before we broke up. It was at that moment that I realized that I didn't even know her surnames. Rob never mentioned Shannon's last name. It's time to melt the lead. I tried to be calm, and at the same time, open. "Is Mr. Abbey here? Or we'll only discuss this twice?" She didn't smile at my pathetic attempt at humor. "That's why I invited you. I'm not looking for anything, but I hope we can avoid problems." "What do you mean, you're not looking for anything?" "John, I've never been married. I tried dating several guys, but nothing worked out. Most of them were not interested in an unmarried mother and were simply looking for good sex without any conditions. I'm done more. I don't understand." "That's it, John. You are Shannon's father." Well, I said it. I was hoping I could tell you in a more sophisticated way this way, but sometimes everything. It's not go the way we plan. Of course, I had no idea. Can I have some more? Coffee? And that's all? And that's all? What can you say? I think I understand why you told them they couldn't date anymore. Unfortunately, I think it was already too late. By the time I found out that Rob was your son, they had already created their relationship. Oh my God, you say my son and my daughter are having sex. I'm absolutely sure. I think that brothers and sisters should not love each other physically. The fresh coffee was too hot to drink. I blew on the cup and my daughter's mother stared at me, waiting for some words of wisdom that I didn't have. Abby, I don't think we have a choice, do we? We have to tell them and hope that it's not too late. There was a sudden change of mood at the table. I'm very sorry, John. I should have told you, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. You just got married, and I didn't want to ruin your life. So you decided to ruin your own life instead. I have a beautiful, smart daughter. I didn't ruin my life. I just needed to make some adjustments. I finished my coffee and leaned back in my chair. By the way, John, I don't want to seem nosy, but where is Catherine? I'm afraid we've grown apart. I always thought it was a good word, but I never thought I would have a chance to use it. Oh, sorry for asking. We sat in silence for a few moments. John, will you tell them yourself, or should I do it? You go forward, and I will support you as much as I can. Not even a minute later, Shannon and Rob were sitting with us at the kitchen table. Abby handed Shannon a folded piece of paper. Oh my God! Shannon immediately caught Rob's attention, and yet she didn't even unfold the paper. What's happening? It's a mysterious birth certificate that I wasn't supposed to see until I was 21. Rob looked puzzled. What's so unusual about a birth certificate? Shannon didn't answer. She unfolded the form and stared at him with her mouth open. There must be a mistake here. Mom, tell me it's not true. Abby didn't answer her daughter. She stared at the floor. Rob tried to look at the paper, but Shannon hid it. Please, Mom, tell me it's not true. There was still no answer. Disgusted, Shannon threw the birth certificate across the table and ran out of the room, crying. Dad, what's going on? I'm really sorry, Rob. It was difficult for us to tell you this, but you should have known. Know that? Sir, take it. Shannon is your sister. Silence reigned in the kitchen. In the distance, somewhere in the house, we heard Shannon crying. Rob slowly stood up and left the room. I was sure he had a million questions, but right now he wasn't looking for answers. He had more important things to do. After a few moments, the sobs became less intense. Abby, do you happen to have any beer? Abby and I were just finishing our second beer when Rob showed up. Can we go home now, Dad? 2 days later, Rob decided to talk to me again. The house was gloomy, and I felt relieved that something was going to be resolved. I want to do a DNA test. I have the money to pay for it, and I won't take no for an answer. Where do we do this? There is a laboratory in Allentown. $200 for each test. I want to check on Shannon, you and myself. Well, if we're going to go through such trouble, we should check the girls too. I'll pay. Do we need to travel there, or will they mail us the testing material? You can do it this way or that, but I would prefer to go there. Wonderful. You are everything. Arrange it, and we'll make a whole day out of it. I'll even stop by Olive Garden for dinner. That same day, I called the Continental Fire and Flood Control Authority. I spoke with the head of the company's legal department. He wasn't really interested in my marital status, and he quickly told me this, but he was interested in how Brian Masterson paid for the motel rooms he used. When I mentioned that Masterson was Catherine's boss and that I needed more information about the company's adultery policy, he quickly ended the conversation. A few days later, Catherine called. For some strange reason, she had lost her job and was now struggling to pay her bills. She seemed upset when I told her that I couldn't find a job and that I was caring for my parents. She wanted me to give her enough money so she could move back to Baltimore. She put the house up for sale, but things weren't going well. She hoped to get out of Pennsylvania before the car would be taken away. She again tried to explain her connection to Masterson, but quickly abandoned the attempt when I did not answer. Although she didn't mention it, I knew that Brian Masterson had also been fired. She still didn't understand what happened. In 2 days, everything has changed. I'm talking home and found Rob and Shannon on the sofa, smiling like 2 Cheshire cats. They just sat there with stupid grins on their faces. Cool. In what business? Why such long faces? It was a weak attempt at a joke. They all laughed anyway. Do you want good news or not so good? Aren't you mistaken? Don't think. Well, maybe a little bad news, but overall, everything is pretty good. Stop making fun of me. Donna and Darcy are your daughters. The DNA matched. I assume they're happy about that? They still don't know. What else? Shannon is your daughter. More one almost perfect match. I'm a little confused. Where does the good part of all this come from? Don't worry now, but I'm not your son. I didn't expect this. I loved Rob with all my heart and raised him like any good father. Now he tells me that I am not his father. I need more beer. The smiles disappeared from Rob and Shannon's faces. All of a sudden, it became a little more serious and a little less carefree. I returned with a new bottle and plopped down in a chair. Dad, this doesn't change anything between us. You are my father, no matter what the DNA says. I don't know who the sperm donor was, but you will always be my father. I finished half the new bottle. I don't know whether to be happy or sad. I don't know if this is good news or bad. I do not know what to do. I just don't know what to do. My new daughter and my ex-son were just sitting on the couch, not saying anything. Have you told your mother yet, Shannon? No. Why don't you guys run and tell her the news? I have a lot to think about. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, trying to escape this whole situation. They were always very delicate. John, if there is anything we can do, please let us know. We won't give advice, but we are more than willing to help in any other way. Dad was always next to me. I wish I could be the same for Rob. Abby found me a few hours later at the Circle Bar. I don't know how she knew I was there, and I don't remember getting drunk. Looking back, I don't know why I got drunk. It wasn't that bad, just everything got mixed up. It had been 10 years since I last drank too much, and I didn't have a good excuse for it. I woke up on the couch at Abby's house. Anyway, she took me there. I was dressed, but took off his shoes. I smelled fresh coffee, but the toilet was more important. She was waiting at the kitchen table when I returned from the bathroom. The bathrooms in these old houses were always on the 2nd floor, so I was forced to attack the stairs to use them. I won this battle, albeit barely. Abby didn't offer me anything other than coffee, which was fine under the circumstances. I really ruined everything. I don't know who to apologize to first. Looks like you weren't the only one who had sex with Catherine that weekend. You just drew the short straw. That mouth, I don't even remember having sex with her. It was with her words. I had no alibi or way to prove that I didn't sleep with her. I chose the easy way, like a moron. Chert, I must be the biggest idiot in the world. There was no answer from the other end of the table. Finally, she spoke. Hey, don't look at me. I completely agree with your self-assessment. I do not know what to do. I thought the divorce had already begun. Yes, but I feel like I should do something else. I think you should take a shower and shave now. I was in a really bad place and felt like crap. Can you give me a ride home? Over the next few days, Rob was in high spirits. The girls seemed happy with the genetic test, but could not come to terms with their mother. My mom and dad supported me as much as possible, without going too deep into things they shouldn't. This was greatly appreciated. Rob decided he needed to take action. Dad, I want to know. You Ochum? She should know, Dad. Mom needs to know who my real father is. It was in a college dorm, right? This means that Mom got pregnant from one of your brothers, and you took the blame on yourself. Is there any way to make her tell you names? Wow, you assume there was more than one. You don't seem to think very highly of your mother. Not after what she did to you then and what she's doing now. She was a slob and remains. I still have it to this day. How? Why take it? Have you been with her all these years? I ignored the last question. I have an idea. I don't know if it will work, but it's worth a try. That same day, I called my loving wife. I tried to mentally organize what I wanted to say, but I was afraid that in the end I would get confused and that would be it. I'll ruin it. John, how can I help you? I didn't expect the call. Judging by her tone of voice, I was afraid that she would think this call was an attempt at reconciliation. Come to me. You have to be very careful not to introduce it misleadingly. I was thinking about our last conversation. You mentioned something about wanting to move in with your sister. This is what you still are. Want? Yes. Have you figured out how to help me? I would be very grateful. I can give you $2,000 to help, but in return, I need a couple of things. Okay, this will really help. What do you need? I don't think you know what I'm doing. DNA analysis of all children. Oh, what? From her, it came out in a muffled burst that she had no idea about the tests. I'm really sorry, John. I hoped this would never come up. It seemed like everything was between you and Rob. It was so good. I found it interesting that she mentioned Rob, but not Darcy or Donna. What about girls? I don't understand what you're talking about, John. What girls? Weren't you worried about their DNA tests? No. Why? Her answer seemed sincere to me, and I decided not to pursue this topic further. I would like to know the name or names of who Rob's father is. Tell me and you'll get $2,000. The pause on the other end of the line was much longer than I expected. Catherine, whoever this guy is, he doesn't think highly enough of you to make you an honest woman. Why do you think it needs to be protected? He used you and dumped you on me. It's me who needs care, not him. Okay, fine. There were 3 of them. I don't know which one is the father. Names? Kyle Simmons, Ray Thorenson, and Philip Berger. I knew them all. 3 spoiled rich kids who thought they could get away with anything. They were all fraternity brothers who turned out to be less than loyal. Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate it. And also, what do you need, John? If you're not going to stay in the house and you can't sell it, can I take it? Oh, God, yes. I can't sell it, and I would like more than anything to give it to you. Even if I find a buyer, I won't get enough from the deal to pay the real estate commission. You'll get it as soon as I move out. I will sign all the papers. John, I also have a small favor to ask. What exactly, Catherine? Can you somehow arrange for the children and I to meet? Nothing special, but I'm their mother nonetheless, and I'd really like to see them sometimes. I'm sure I can arrange something. 2 days later, Catherine received her $2,000, and I received the title to the house and the mortgage. Rob learned from me about possible sperm donors. The DNA information was a little more complicated, but not impossible. Ray Thorenson was a high school teacher in Altoona. All government employees were required to have their DNA on file. These files were not available to the general public, but Rob had no trouble figuring out how to get what he needed. Ray Thorenson was not Rob's father. Philip Berger was a guest of the Ohio State Penitentiary. Phil seemed to like young girls. Girls who, according to the state, should not sleep with men old enough to be their fathers. It's not for me to judge, but I was glad that Philip's whereabouts were known. Of course, all the data on Philip is in the database. I don't know how Rob got access to this, but it ultimately turned out that Phil was not Rob's father. If Catherine was being honest with me, that meant Kyle Simmons had to be the one. The search continued. Seymour Trump and I went to high school together. Seymour attended Dickerson and received his law degree when I went to the University of Pennsylvania. Seymour and the law were not a match made in heaven. He wasn't the straightest arrow in the quiver. In fact, he was mean, to say the least. However, he was the ideal candidate for our project. Using Nittany Lions alumni news and fraternity web pages, we located Lid Cole Simmons at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Kyle was a big shot in ROTC in college, and it turns out he made a career out of it. Abby had a cousin in the Pennsylvania National Guard who was able to obtain Kyle's DNA record. All confirmed. By the end of the week, Catherine was no longer home. Instead of making mortgage payments, I simply refinanced everything, removing Catherine's name from all documents. I returned to the house, but the children wanted to stay in Frackville for the rest of the school year. Rob wanted to stay to be close to Shannon. I think I wanted to be there for Abby, but there were issues that needed to be resolved. I was amazed at the poor performance of Catherine's lawyer. It would be very easy for him to determine that I did not quit my job, but simply took a vacation. It turned out that he never checked. I got the impression that he filled out a divorce form that he downloaded from the internet. There was still time before the final decision, a few months, but I didn't expect any problems. The worst thing about me going back to work is that Rob will lose his grants. The good part was that I would be able to pay my tuition or get a loan. Abby worked in an office that paid doctors. It was a 9-to-5 job, 5 days a week. I started spending all my weekends in Frackville. Rob and Shannon got along great, with one small flaw. Shannon spent a lot of time with Darcy and Donna. It was mostly shopping, but Rob wasn't too keen on sharing it. Abby and I thought it was funny, in a good way. For some reason, Abby and I acted more like friends than ex-lovers. It seemed like neither of us was ready to take the first step towards intimacy. Seymour flooded the legal system with every piece of paper he could think of. It worked on the principle of a shotgun. He figured that if he filed enough cases against Simmons, one or two of them might stick around. He also hoped to get at least one partial confession so he could get money from Kyle. I didn't pay him a cent, but he didn't seem to mind. I didn't want anything from lawsuits, but it would be nice if we could pay for Rob's college. It will be easier this way when the girls start studying. Everything between Rob and me remained the same. The DNA story didn't seem to bother either of us. Rob was just happy he wasn't Shannon's brother. I was glad that I was a father, but I was sorry that when she was growing up, I was not around. She seemed happy with everything. All started to return to normal. I settled everything with the house, but did not want to live alone. Rob and Shannon had finished school and were both working. In 2 months, Rob will be leaving for state college. Shannon was about to begin a 2-year program at Reading Area Community College in some area of medical administration. Catherine called from Baltimore. Relationship between her and her parents didn't go very well. She lived with her sister and could not afford to get her own home. She has had problems getting a job due to bad recommendations from the last employer. She regretted everything and regretted that she could not turn everything around back. She hoped that I could forgive her. Although forgiveness on my part was out of the question, she was glad to hear that the girls were planning a trip to Baltimore to see her. The conversation ended on a high note. By the end of the summer, my life began to improve. The divorce was final and there were no conditions. Kyle Simmons acknowledged Rob's paternity on the advice of his lawyer. Instead of a cash settlement, it was agreed that Kyle would pay all of Rob's college expenses within 4 years. Kyle also paid Seymour's fees. What else worse for Kyle, his wife filed for divorce, which included her entitled to 49% of Kyle's upcoming pension. Using simple math, she determined that Rob was conceived just 4 weeks before their wedding. Coupled with several other indiscretions over the years, this proved to be the straw that broke the camel's back. The biggest surprise was Abby's appearance. It was too late for dinner, but quite okay for a bottle of wine. She didn't say anything until we got comfortable. John, I need a favor. I liked the way she started the conversation because I felt obligated to her and wanted to do something for her. Shannon starts classes at REEC in a few weeks, and I'm not thrilled with her. Trips, especially in winter through the mountains. I wanted to ask, is it okay if she stays here with you? Well, of course. The girls are coming back and I think they'll all get along great. Is there one more problem? We've never been apart before, and I'm hesitant to leave her one. She won't be alone. I'll be here and the girls will too. According to her face, I realized that I had said something wrong. I'm so sorry, Abby. This was probably the wrong answer. I see that you were expecting something different. Please explain. I swear, John Richel, you are the dumbest person I know. I won't let you off the hook again. I'll sit here until you figure it out, so give me more guilt. Well, it took me a full 5 seconds to realize what was going on. Before I finished pouring her wine, I was grinning from ear to ear. Well, that's it. It turned out as it should. Rob is doing well at the University of Pennsylvania and returns home every chance he gets. Shannon has excellent grades in RACC and will graduate 6 months early. Donna was accepted to James Madison University in Virginia with a good scholarship. Darcy is still undecided on college. Abby, Mrs. Richell, has a nice little medical practice covering 3 counties. She hopes Shannon will be willing to step in for her. When will the Rebbe be born? Knock, as the famous English writer says, life goes on. The husband knows about his wife's infidelity, but for a long time he turns a blind eye to it. He gives up, files for divorce, takes his 3 children, and leaves to live with his parents. His wife tries to resist, but eventually retreats. His son meets a girl, and after learning his last name, her mother forbids them to meet until she talks to his father. In the conversation, he learns that he is the girl's father. His son decides to do a DNA test. His father decides to test all 4 children. Everyone turns out to be his except the son. They find his real father. He pays for his tuition. His ex-wife sells him their house, and they all move there, along with his son's girlfriend and her mother. 5. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chat doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. Meet Bob Rudensky. Bob is 42, married with 3 children. Bob's wife, Mindy, makes choices that bring consequences for Bob, giving him choices that will have consequences. It was and will continue to be a very difficult night for Bob. The rain was pouring down in buckets, and Bob's windshield wipers were working at full power, but they were not very effective. The winds driving the rain pushed Bob's car, causing it to slide along the road. The radio simply filled the hours of driving with noise. Bob could almost hear it through the growing anger of the storm if he tried. The storm was taking its toll on the power lines. Sparks lit up the road as Bob drove around downed wires, uprooted trees, and trash cans blown away by the wind. He clutched the steering wheel, turning pale in his hands. Outside, the wind howled. Sheets of metal roofing flew past. They posed an immediate threat. The wipers continued to beat a rhythm without noticeable effect. Bob finally turned onto his dark street and pulled up to his driveway. There was a red sports car parked in his driveway. Bob braked suddenly, almost crashing into her. Bob is now home, but that hasn't stopped him from having a high-stress, adrenaline-filled day and night. Bob had been on his feet for over 15 hours. He long ago found his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th wind. He was so electrified that he was shaking. He took his large wrench and headed through the storm to his front door. I walked up to the door like a drowned man. My house was dark. I thought it was because of a power outage. I didn't know what I would find. I thought I was ready for anything. I inserted the key into the lock, unlocked it, and began to enter. Sparks flew across the street behind me. The light from the sparks and lightning revealed men's pants, socks, underwear, and a shirt scattered around the living room, as well as a skirt and blouse. I froze. I listened carefully. Finally, I heard the sounds of people having sex through the storm. Lots of oohs and ahs coming from the top floor. I retreated, closing the front door. I was broken. 15 years, well, more precisely 14 years, 7 months and 3 days, of marriage disappeared like smoke. The wind and rain whipped into my face. My stomach was doing somersaults. Sweat appeared on my forehead. I know it doesn't make sense, but I was overcome with a feeling of absolute calm mixed with furious anger. I became very concerned about the safety of some people. I braved the storm and made my way back to my truck and climbed into it. I fired it up and pulled out of the driveway. I turned the wipers to maximum power, but everything was still blurry. True, perhaps it was the tears flowing from my eyes, and not the weather this time. I make it to the end of the street before I completely fall apart. I was a mess. I'm sobbing. My mind was filled with images of my wife joyfully and lustfully entertaining her faceless lover. I opened the car door and stuck my head out to breathe air. The storm hit me in the face. Random thoughts of punishment and revenge echo through my head. I do not think so. No internal reasoning about how close I am to getting the shot. I didn't plan to stay home tonight. Tomorrow was Friday. That's when she thought I was coming home. The storm shut it all down. I spent a grueling 11 hours securing a job site before heading out into the hurricane. I headed home. I was hoping to avoid the trouble outside, only to discover the abomination inside. Honestly, I think that was the moment when I lost my mind. I grabbed the phone and called her. I was pretending. There were no cognitive thoughts in my brain. "Hi, it's Mindy. Sorry, I can't come to the phone right now. Leave me a message. Thank you." I hung up. I was seething. "Hi, it's Mindy. Sorry, I can't come to the phone right now. Leave me a message. Thank you." I hung up again. I turned my truck around and headed back to the house. My phone rang and it was Mindy. I shouted over the noise of the thunderstorm outside. I tried to call and tell them that I would be home soon. Work was stopped due to the storm. I tried to call you twice. "Bob, I'm sorry," she interrupted me. "I was in the bath and just saw you calling." I heard some muffled sounds as if she had hung up and was talking to someone. "Mindy?" I said with a growl in my voice. "Oh, Bob, I'm so glad you're coming home tonight. How long will it take you to get here? The storm is really strong and it would be great if my big guy could come and protect me." This just made me angry. "I'm about 5 minutes from home, but with a thunderstorm, who knows?" I said. She hurried to hang up. "Okay, honey, take care. See you soon." A few moments later, I'm pulled over. I hit the brakes. The engine revs high. The lights are off. I back into the alley that opens onto the road. I watch my porch. My front door opens. My wife looks out, then comes back in and opens my front door to let him out. I see a kiss and a playful slap on my wife's bare ass. He steps back. He air kisses her as my front door closes. He turns and heads to his car, parked in my driveway. He pulls his coat tight and braves the storm to his car. While the storm raged, I waited for him to close the car door. Stepping away from the brake, I stepped on the gas, kicking tails of gravel behind me. Arcs of electrical sparks from dancing power lines and lightning made my goal clear as day. As the storm raged, I waited for him to close the car door. My foot off the brake, I slammed on the gas, sending streams of gravel flying behind me. Arcs of sparks from dancing power lines and lightning illuminated my target like daylight. My truck had a significant amount of weight with all my tools inside. As I cut across the street and pulled up to my driveway, my foot was stuck to the floor. I even shouted, "Bam, speed!" I slammed a red sports car into the garage door. It was in the air when it hit my wife's SUV, which still has 7 damn years to pay off. The front of the small red sports car was crumpled. Her backside crumpled inward. Think about an accordion. She bounced back to me and my truck got a second chance. When everything stopped moving, I assessed the damage. The impact was strong enough that even the side airbags deployed. Cool. I turned on the high beams. The little red sports car got smaller. The fastening areas have been fully utilized. I could see his head. He didn't move. Crap. I killed him. Crap. I sat in my truck, collecting my thoughts. I noticed that I was not hurt, but I was filled with rage equal to the storm. She was in a panic. Her hot, rich lover was enjoying her hysterics because her husband was just moments away from home. In fact, he was laughing at her. He asked what she expected, having sex with him in her husband's bed. He thought it was funny. She had to promise him a lot. Finally, she almost managed to drive him out of the house. She opened the front door a crack, stuck her head out, and looked around the street. No sign of Bob's truck. She breathed a sigh of relief when she finally shooed him out the door. She ran upstairs to take off the bedding. She hadn't even made it to the bedroom before the whole house shook. The noise made less of an impression on her. Her first thought was that a big old elm tree had fallen on the house. She ran downstairs. Through the living room window, she saw that the old elm tree was still standing, fighting the storm. Bob sat in his truck, looking at the destruction that was his garage. Its high beam illuminated the damage in full relief. Bob grabbed his large flashlight and climbed out of the truck. He looked around the front of his truck. He was impressed. He looked on the move. He then walked towards the crushed red sports car. Bob reached through the broken driver's window. The guy came to his senses. This answered that question. Bob grabbed the guy's head and started slamming his face into the steering wheel. Bob's wife's scream caught his attention. Bob pulled himself out of the red sports car and saw his wife standing naked in the kitchen doorway, screaming. Her hair was a mess. She got to the kitchen and opened the door to the garage. The truck's headlights blinded her. At first, all she saw was her wrecked car. It made her scream. She then noticed a wrecked red sports car. Then an ominous dark figure highlighted by the headlights. Lightning exploded, splitting the old elm tree in front of the house. A long flash of lightning revealed a dark figure as her husband. The pitch of Mindy's scream increased. She fainted. The fury of the storm intensified. The picnic bench flew into the air, spinning and rolling as it made its way down the street. A 204 board flying through the air punched a hole in the garage wall. The howl of the wind became deafening. Bob watched his wife fall. The crushed sports car swallowed the ass. It would take the pliers of life to open this tin, Bob thought. Bob headed towards the door. He needed to close it. As angry as he was, breaking through the storm was high on his list of tasks. The breach, which was a garage door, breached the shell of the house. With this breach, the storm will begin to tear the house apart. Bob was in damage control mode. Bob reached the door, grabbed his wife's hand, and pulled her back into the kitchen. He closed the door and moved the refrigerator to help keep the door closed. He turned on the flashlight and looked around. It was calm inside. The storm remained outside. Bob called 911. Nothing. He looked at his phone. No network. He picked up his wife and carried her to the downstairs bathroom. He did not very carefully throw it into the bath. He sat on the toilet, thinking about how his life had become a nightmare. He heard something hit the house. He could feel his house starting to fall apart. Bob looked at his wife. "Bob, I'm so..." "Just shut up," Bob shouted through the storm. "Haven't you caused enough trouble?" She shrank into herself. The storm could be heard tearing their home apart, even though they were huddled together in the small, dark bathroom, lit only by Bob's flashlight. They were miles apart. Bob did his best to control his anger. Bob's wife's mind was spinning. She couldn't calm down. She was emotionally exhausted, psychologically unstable, and also physically exhausted. She was hungry after all the sex. She was cold and naked, shivering in the bath. She saw the rage in Bob's eyes. She was afraid. I was afraid to provoke him, so I kept my mouth shut. There wasn't much talking in the bathroom. Bob broke the silence. "Why?" She lowered her head, tears falling like rain outside. "What's his name?" "Richard," she mumbled. "Is this going on long?" "Only a couple of weeks." "You love him?" "No, it was just for sex," she sobbed, feeling another piece of their marriage being torn away. She continued, "Bob, what's wrong with Richard?" The words caught in her throat. You killed him?" After a moment of silence, Bob looked at her. "What do you care about that? He was just for sex." The silence that fell between Bob and Mindy was interrupted only by the squealing of boards being torn from their house by the storm. "No," Bob said after a rather long pause. His no was also a response to the pain in Bob's heart. Bob turned off the flashlight to save battery. No more words were spoken, no more thoughts were shared. It was a dark, ugly silence. After some time, Mindy spoke. "Bob, for your sake, not for me or him, but for your sake, you can't leave him there. You're not the kind of person who would leave any person there." She spoke pleadingly. The worst part was that she knew her husband, and she was right. If he had left Richard to suffer his deserved fate, Mindy was sure that deep down, he would never have forgiven himself. This very short conversation ended when another part of the old elm crashed into the living room. The consequences have now forced Bob to make his choice to leave the relative safety of the bathroom and face the raging storm. Through the destruction of his home to save the life of a man who was complicit in unleashing the storm in Bob's head, heart, home, and family. What a test it was for Bob. Bob walked through the ruined living room where his mother's chair, Bob's only tangible connection with his poor late saintly mother and her family, lay broken into small pieces, crushed by such a large old elm branch. In the bathtub, safe from the storm, Bob's wife was in the dark, surrounded by the sounds of the storm outside. There was a painful awareness within her that she was on the very edge of destruction. Her insides were churning. Mindy and her mind were as much a mess as her home, an old elm that had survived decades of storms. But this storm was the end for the old elm. When Bob finally moved the refrigerator away from the door, he was able to reach his garage. It was a complete mess. The roof was torn off, one wall stood, the other simply disappeared. What was left of the garage door was sandwiched between Mindy's little red sports car and SUV. It fluttered like a flag in the wind. Everything in the garage was exposed to the fury of the storm. Everything that was not tied down was carried away with the wall. His truck, rocking and rolling, still held all the cars in place. His wife's SUV was pinned against the back wall. The red sports car was still hanging on. The front bumper of Bob's truck was holding the back of the little red sports car down. Bob looked into the sports car. The guy didn't look very good. He was as pale as a sheet. The wind picked up strength and attacked again. The wind picked up the small sports car, lifting it up and down, throwing it everywhere, pushing its passenger into everything. His head nodded like a doll's. Bob tried to open both doors. They didn't give in. Bob headed to his truck for better tools than just his hands. He grabbed his miner's lamp helmet, utility knife, hammer, and 5-foot breaker, and walked back to the sports car. He ended up having to break the windshield. He then cut Richard out of the seatbelt and pulled him through the windshield, through what was left of the hood, then threw him to the floor. Bob dragged him back through the kitchen, ignoring the closed door, through the old elm tree in the living room and back into the cramped bathroom where he dropped Richard on the floor. He looked at his wife. Satisfied now? Bob, sitting on his toilet, looked at his watch. He had just arrived home a little over an hour ago. It seemed like a lifetime ago. Sometime around 4 a.m., they felt the worst of the storm had passed. Richard woke up. It seemed to Bob that he wouldn't shut up. Richard really was a fool. Richard went overboard when he told Bob in detail what a slut his wife was. He took pleasure in twisting the knife in the wound. That was always the best part of dealing with wives destroying the husband. Richard enjoyed it all. A dispassionate observer would be justified in assuming that Richard had a death wish. Bob's wife was sobbing but didn't say anything. That spoke volumes to Bob. All good things come to an end, so is this night. Around 6 a.m., Bob kicked down the bathroom door and walked into the ruins of what was there. Bob looked around. The entire front facade of his house, as well as almost all of the walls of his garage, were simply gone. Ruin was a good word for it. His cell phone had 2 bars of charge. He called 911. When he finished the call, he headed to his truck. When Bob got into the truck, all he knew for sure was that he needed to be somewhere else. Mindy stayed with her parents and their children. There was nowhere else to go. There, the children survived the storm. This was Mindy's only shelter after the storm. She didn't explain why Bob wasn't around. The aftermath of the storm had left so much to do. Mindy hadn't been pressed too hard on the issue just yet. Mindy, deep down, was scared. Losing Bob, become a single mother of 3 children. It's not like she and Bob were swimming in money. Things were tight, which is why Bob took those jobs away from home. Although he didn't like it, he did it for the sake of his family. The family could not have survived without their combined efforts. Mindy hasn't heard from Bob for 3 days. There was all this chaos with the insurance agents. Her father was helping her with it. The children's school was badly damaged, so they were in the way. Mindy's mom took care of her grandchildren. Mindy didn't know what to do, so she just tried to take it step by step. Bob was several studies away, actually. Bob in the bar of the Ramada Hotel, where he was quickly becoming a regular, reflected on his life. staring into an almost empty glass of whiskey. Bob began to view Ralph, the bartender, in an almost mystical sense. Every time Bob's glass of whiskey was near the end, Ralph would appear and the glass of whiskey would be filled again, as if by magic. No words were exchanged, almost as if Ralph could read his mind, his wife, his children. Bob was lost. He wanted revenge. Bob was angry. Bob was also amazed. He just couldn't reconcile the wife he knew, loved, and respected, the mother of his children, his partner, his best friend, with all the nonsense Richard was spewing all that long night in the bathroom. His mind was reeling from the consequences of other people's choices as he sipped his whiskey. But in reality, it was his ego that was bruised and battered. He began to see this as, through the bottom of the glass of whiskey he held in his hand, he scanned the now smoldering heap that was his life. His wife became a cheater. How did that hurt him? Okay, more sex with the mother of his children, that was obvious. He could find sex in other places. After all, he had two good hands. He didn't own his wife, and if she wanted to be a slut, was that really on him? He clearly shouldn't have interfered. He didn't want to look. The images in his own imagination were bad enough. If he were on the other side of the world and she was having sex, would a tree fall in the forest? But he felt offended. So what now? She offended him. It was disgusting. But how could this be healed? You can't go back in time and make your wife not a cheater. And then there were the children. And his glass suddenly filled up again. And this is where the road meets the rubber. Bob found enough distance to allow him to gain perspective. Sometime around 10 a.m., after breakfast at the Ramada coffee shop, Bob hit the road, returning from the aftermath of the storm. Traveling 2 states with a clear head and an extra-large glass of coffee to go gives a person time to think. Time to try to get my head straight. Bob faced some very serious questions. Divorce, although the obvious path they could have taken, was a bad choice in Bob's clear, detached state of mind. It was not possible to support 2 farms. There was simply not enough money. One was difficult. The children needed more care than he could provide to keep the family afloat. At 12, 9, and 5 years old, there were many years of parenthood ahead. Bob also had to admit that he needed to know where Mindy was. Was she devoted to the children or to Richard? He couldn't see it as anything other than making one choice or another for her. If she chose children, what does that mean? And who the hell is Richard? The man was a massive jerk. He needed to figure it out. It was already late when Bob drove up to his wife's relatives. He believed that was where Mindy hid the children the night of the hurricane. He didn't call ahead. He'll use the surprise to wrest some more truth out again. The last hour or so of Bob's trip showed the complete devastation of the hurricane. Several roads are still blocked. Bob had to spend time going back. Arriving at his wife's relatives, he saw that their house looked pretty good, possibly roof repairs. He parked his truck, walked up the porch steps, crossed the porch, and opened the door, just like he had done for years. He entered the living room, and there was pandemonium. Children were all around Bob. The hugs began. Bob looked at the smiling and loving faces of his children. He looked at the worried faces of his relatives, then saw Mindy's face. Her eyes were huge. She was very pale, and her jaw dropped. They looked at each other, Mindy sobbing, breaking eye contact, and heading to the bedroom. It took a while for things to calm down. Bob looked around. The children were in a good place. Mindy was safe. Bob says goodbye to his children and in-laws. Mindy looks out from the darkened bedroom and watches her husband leave. Bob became a resident at the Residence Inn. They have a good corporate weekly rate. His boss got it for him. So there are new expenses. The good news is that Bob's work saved the company a lot of money, so he was promoted. This could lead to more travel. Mindy still hasn't gotten over anything with her parents. She also didn't have the inner strength to face Bob. Mindy is just this side of crazy town. All that really mattered to her was family. And it was in a sorry state, by her own hands. The weight of her guilt The sad eyes of her children, the confused faces of her parents, and worst of all, the dead face of her husband. This was her personal hell. It swirled around in her mind and lodged itself in her soul. And so things continued. Bob received the first installment of his damages from his homeowner's insurance. This allowed him to begin restoring his home. FEMA money began arriving at the end of the month. This helped with everything else. Bob's buddy Ike was a contractor, so the weekend was mostly a Bob and Ike show. Ike's crew moved forward throughout the week as needed while Bob was at his day job. Within a month, real progress was made in the house. Bob was adding an apartment to the back of the house, and the basement was a new basement that could one day become a man cave. Direct access was available through a hatch in the floor. The other entrance was from the kitchen, down the stairs into a hallway that ran underneath the house. Both the in-laws' room and the basement had combination locks both inside and outside the doors. On weekends, Bob's parents brought lunch and children. Bob looked forward to these dinners all week. Years later, Bob was heard saying that these dinners were some of the best times of his life. After 3 months, Bob and Ike could see the finish line. Mindy came over for lunch, but she still couldn't talk to Bob, so she just sat in the car, watching her family recover. Nevertheless, she came out. It was a step. At the end of the 4th month, the house was restored. Thanks to Ike's help and Bob's sweat, Bob was able to expand the house and fix everything else using only the insurance proceeds. Moving home would allow Bob to save money on housing. Even at the corporate rate, it was expensive. Bob began saving again, just like when he and Mindy first started. But only Bob moved home. Bob and his children were ready. However, without someone to care for the children during the week, it simply wouldn't work. The parents were wonderful, but they were older, and having 3 noisy children constantly running and jumping was clearly wearing on them. They never said anything, but Bob had eyes. Bob knew it was time to talk to Mindy. Bob decided that they needed to talk in their house if they were ever going to get their lives back. Bob was more than ready to move on. Bob talked to his in-laws. They acted as go-betweens since Mindy hadn't spoken to Bob in months. The time, place, and other details were agreed upon. It was Saturday. Bob had been living in the restored house for 2 weeks. Mindy drove her parents' car to the house. She parked on the street. She couldn't bring herself to pull into the driveway. She packed lunch in a picnic basket. Bob left the front door open. It was a thoughtful gesture on Bob's part. Mindy brought the friyad chicken and all the trimmings. This was Bob's favorite dish. She even brought cherry pea. They had unsweetened tea, just the way Bob liked it. Mindy was dressed nicely, conservatively. She left the top 3 buttons undone, showing a little cleavage, which Bob also liked. She was a little too thin. Her smile was a little tense, but her eyes, although beautiful as always, darted back and forth like those of a small prey animal, always on the alert and ready to run, so to speak. It was good that they were eating. It gave Mindy something to do with her hands. They ate in silence. They finished lunch, and Mindy got up to clean up. It's time to cross the Rubicon. Bob reached out and grabbed Mindy's wrist. "Leave it. It's time for us to talk," Bob said softly. Mindy sat back down in her folding chair by the filing table. "Mindy, let me start. If you don't agree with anything I say, just let me know. You don't have to explain why you don't agree. I just want to see if we can agree on something, okay?" Mindy didn't know what this day would mean for her. She was on edge. She didn't sleep all night. She just couldn't say a word, so she nodded. Bob and Mindy looked into each other's eyes. They each had questions that neither of them wanted to answer. Bob took a deep breath and began. "Mindy, the most important thing to me is our family. The children are what I care about first." Bob looked at Mindy. She simply nodded. Bob took this as agreement. "You know, like me, things have been tight money-wise for quite some time. The only way we kept afloat was the extra money I made from these damn jobs away from home. The storm didn't help." Bob did pause. Mindy nodded. "With you taking care of the kids and your part-time job, well, it helps, but not that much. You didn't even make enough to pay for your car, and if we had to pay someone for childcare..." Bob left the sentence unfinished. Mindy wasn't stupid, she knew what their situation was. So for the kids, the least painful way is for us to stay together. Mindy couldn't believe Bob was talking about staying together. This was the answer she had prayed to God for. It took her a minute to answer. She jumped up and tried to hug her husband. More than anything, she longed for his hug so she could return home from this nightmare. Bob raised his hand like a police officer making a traffic stop. "Don't touch me." Mindy collapsed back into her chair. Bob continued, "Mindy, it is clear that you are not worthy of trust. Although I love you, my trust in you is gone. I don't know if I will ever recover from the pain you caused me." Bob allowed a little of his anger to come out. Mindy stumbled back in shock, her eyes getting even bigger. Tears started to fall down her face. But let's leave that aside for now. Bob was clearly trying to control his anger. So now it's a question of how we move forward with our lives. Bob took a deep breath and continued. "Mindy, the idea of leaving you alone with the kids while I work away from home without precautions would be stupid of me. Honestly, it would also drive me crazy." Bob looked into Mindy's eyes. "And before any trust is given to you, not me, have a lot of work to do. I'm not sure we'll survive a repeat of the night of the storm. I'm also not sure I'll ever trust you again." Bob stood up and went to the refrigerator. He took out a beer on ice. There was no longer a refrigerator in the house. He placed one beer in front of Mindy. "You'll need this for the next part." Bob took a long sip of his beer. Being away from home, what's stopping you from just reconnecting with Richard? And more importantly, how can I deal with this while I'm at work? Those are a couple of questions we need to answer. Mindy, I don't believe a word of it. What are you saying? I know that you are a traitor who willingly puts her children's future in danger. And when it comes to me, well, disrespect. I'm not even sure I ever want to touch you again. But this is not fair. We are husband and wife. I'm not going to accept celibacy, especially after I had to listen to your lover describe your actions in great detail. Honestly, I believe his version of events more than anything you can say. So, we need to help me overcome my disgust for you. So today, after you leave, I want you to write, in great detail, all the sexual acts you performed and all the promises you made to Richard. Don't miss anything. Don't worry about how it will affect me. Consider this your first tiny step toward restoring something between us. The full truth, the whole truth, without embellishment. And it must be true, because I'm going to test it. I expect this tomorrow morning. Leave this on the way to church with the kids." Mindy just smiled. "So far, do you agree with everything I said?" Mindy smiled. "No, Mindy, you need to say it. Now." "Yes, Bob," Mindy said in a quiet little girl voice. "I cannot hear you." "Yes, Bob." "Mindy, I can't hear you." "Yes, Bob," Mindy screamed, shocking even herself. "Anything, please, Bob, anything," she continued. It was the most she had said to him since she had begged him to save her lover. "Now go." Mindy left with tears in her eyes. Bob took another beer. The remaining half of the package was the next item on Bob's to-do list. The next morning, Mindy and the kids pulled up to the house. This time, she pulled up to the entrance. The kids were pretty happy to be home, and with both their parents, it wasn't lost on Mindy or Bob. Bob took Mindy's letter. Although they didn't really have any furniture, Bob decided it was time for his entire family to sleep under one roof. He told the kids after church to pack up and move home. It would be like camping, but at least they would be together. That night, after getting the kids settled in sleeping bags and air mattresses, Bob and Mindy had their sleeping bags without the air mattresses. There were no conversations. Mindy fell asleep crying. The next morning, everyone drank milk and cereal. The children were given money for a hot lunch and boarded the school bus. Bob took 2 weeks off from work. With his new position, they were paying him. They said, consider it a paid vacation. Bob had never had anything like this before. As soon as the children left, the parents arrived. They were there to help Mindy set up her house. They brought some of their old things to help Bob and Mindy. Bob left for a meeting soon after. It soon became clear that the real reason Mindy's parents were coming was that Mindy wasn't supposed to be alone. It turns out her parents didn't trust Mindy any less than Bob did. Bob decided he needed to learn more from Richard. In a move that turned out to be ingenious upon closer inspection, motivated by Bob's base instincts, he met Richard. Bob found this very educational. They met at Ica Senior's diner on the wrong side of town. Richard arrived with two huge thugs, a reasonable precaution given the circumstances. Richard didn't look any worse. True, his nose now deviated a little to the left, but the new dentures, Bob admitted, were good. It was as if Bob had never slammed Richard's face into the steering wheel. The thugs remained outside in their nondescript SUV. Richard arrived in a red Ferrari. The meeting was a little tense at first, but Richard's ego got the better of Bob if he didn't lose his cool. Bob played nice. He even offered us the first jug of beer. By the third pitcher and about halfway through Mindy's letter, they were deep into male bonding. Bob listened and recorded on his phone. And Bob, he learned a lot from Richard. By the fourth pitcher, Richard was really starting to show off. How he chose a slut, what signs he looked for, his keen eye and innate sense of a woman's true needs, and how Richard could bend and shape them to suit his needs. After the fifth jug, Richard and Bob went their separate ways. Richard felt that he had found a friend. Bob felt like he had taken a bath in a damp sewer. Bob now knew that Mindy was being honest, mostly. He gave her an A for effort. It must have hurt like hell to write this letter. Bob wondered what she left out or toned down. This confirmed several things about Mindy for Bob. That night, after putting the kids to bed, Bob took Mindy to the new parents' annex. The door was locked with a combination lock. Bob entered the code and let Mindy inside. The annex was already furnished with a huge four-post bed. There was a sitting area with a chair and footstool, a small coffee table with an iPad on it, a dressing room, and a large bathroom with a jacuzzi. Mindy was a little taken aback. "Mindy, this is where I'll sleep alone. There's a little white button on the wall in our old bedroom. If you press it, it'll send a signal here." Mindy nodded. She wasn't sure what to think. Where did Bob get the money? He then directed her to the iPad. He turned it on, tapped it a few times, and there they were on the iPad. Bob explained, again, that he didn't trust her. He explained how he had equipped the house with video cameras and sound. Everything was transmitted wirelessly to his iPad. Thus, whether at home or away, he could monitor what was happening. He was also able to receive broadcasts on his new iPhone. Mindy was shocked by the level of surveillance. It started to seem like she might not realize how much she had hurt Bob. He then sent her to bed with instructions to sound a signal when she woke up. After the kids left for school, Bob sat down with Mindy for another conversation. Bob's conversations these days were nothing Mindy wanted. "Mindy, according to your letter and your lover, you are completely slutty at your core. One of the things I've learned is that I need to see things as they are. You're a great mom. As far as I can tell, before Richard, you were a good wife and partner, so I saw you as I wanted to see you, the woman I married. Now I see you more clearly. I know you well enough to know that if you choose to suppress the libertine within you, it will come out in a terrible way, just like with Richard. So from now on, we will include slutty as part of your household duties. My room code is 6942. Like you, I have a button on the wall in my bedroom. When I want you, I will give you a signal." And so began Mindy's training. Bob started slow with Mindy. That night, he signaled her at 4 a.m. She arrived a few minutes later, sleepy and in her nightgown. Bob told her to never wear anything when she was in his room. She folded her nightgown and left it on the floor. Bob signaled to her all week, often several times a night. Bob was a strict teacher. It was Sunday morning, and Bob was going back to work that day. The father-in-law and mother-in-law picked up the children and took them to church. Bob and Mindy had several things to do. About an hour after the father-in-law and children left, Bob and Mindy, wearing a decent conservative housewife's dress with nothing underneath, arrived at the hole. Mindy started to get nervous. Bob didn't let it slow him down. Bob dragged Mindy to the piercing studio. Bob arranged everything in advance. The next week was crazy for both Bob and Mindy. Bob couldn't concentrate on his work. He checked his phone every few minutes like a teenage girl. His calls to her drove Mindy crazy. Hell, she couldn't even go to the bathroom without thinking about her husband watching her. Bob spent the entire night reviewing the camera footage, making sure he hadn't missed anything. Of course, the next day, exhausted from lack of sleep, he was even worse at work. By Wednesday, his boss was fed up with Bob. He sent Bob home for the rest of the week and the next 2 weeks. He told Bob to collect his thoughts. He could hire just as good workers with much less hassle. But he liked Bob and felt for him. This was his third marriage. But either Bob will come to his senses or he shouldn't come back. This was definitely not paid time off. Mindy reflected on her situation. She loved Bob to death. She wanted her family, but Mindy had needs. Mindy came to understand her sexual desires. True, having sex with Bob didn't feel like a punishment, she admitted to herself. But somehow, she had to figure out something to make it work, because it really wasn't working. The good news, as Mindy thoroughly explored her desires, was that it involved sex. Mindy realized that if she could just get Bob to take the lead and play his cards right, she knew for sure that she could be one man's woman and not a slut. With this self-awareness, Mindy had something to work with. Mindy moved into the planning phase of her surgery. She figured she would have a full week before Bob returned home. From her second-floor bedroom window, Mindy saw Bob's truck pull up to the house a few days earlier. Mindy waited 5 minutes before pressing the button, signaling Bob. She beeped again, then again. Still nothing. She waited. She was worried. She was scared, but she decided to give her husband space. As she was getting into bed, he signaled to her. Mindy went downstairs and stood in front of Bob's door. Mindy folded her nightgown and placed it on the table next to the door to Bob's room. She punched in the code and opened the door. Bob was lying on the bed, curled up. His sobs tore Mindy's heart apart. Mindy rushed towards him, making soothing noises. It didn't work. Bob exploded like Krakatoa. They sent me home from work. This was a huge humiliation for Bob. Bob never failed at his job. Mindy sighed, hand to lips. She knew her husband. Why? Let me tell you, Mindy. Because I had to watch you. I can't trust you. I couldn't stop. God, how can I live like this? Mindy recoiled in realization of how badly her husband was hurt. But although her plan was not fully formed, she had been digging for it for some time. Why not? She thought to herself. She had nothing to lose. The way Bob was walking now, she assumed things would go south pretty soon. She felt that Bob was ready to kick her out the door. This shouldn't have happened. Bob, I think I know how to make you trust me. And I think I've come up with a way to prove to both of us that I can be faithful. Mindy made the most of the moment. She told Bob about her deep thoughts about her sexual needs. She loved sex. But one thing she was absolutely sure of was that she only wanted Bob. But she really needs Bob to start making an effort. Without Bob's attention, well, they were doomed. Bob explained how leaving her was driving him crazy. He just couldn't trust her. It tore him apart. Every day he wondered if today was the day Richard would get his wife back. If he couldn't work away from home, well, they were doomed. That's when Mindy suggested a test. A test to prove to Bob that she can safely be alone and won't cheat on him. She proudly declared that she could stand up to Richard if only Bob would do his part. It took Bob and Mindy several hours to discuss everything. They both knew that Mindy had to pass this test with flying colors in order for Bob to step back from the cliff. They also prepared for this using every possible precaution. Ultimately, Mindy's idea was so crazy that it might work. For Bob, this little test that Mindy came up with was dangerous. If she had failed, Bob would have neither Hollywood nor a happy ending. There were two huge problems. Firstly, who will be the tester? Secondly, in order for the test to be real, Mindy couldn't have Bob around. He couldn't use his surveillance systems for a whole week. He needed a clean break from watching Mindy. He had to do this, otherwise he wouldn't have a job. A whole work week. It was a long time to leave Mindy unattended. This really scared Bob because at this point, despite Mindy's good intentions, her involvement with Richard showed both Bob and Mindy that she could return to her past behavior at any moment. They talked until late in the evening. Finally, around 11 p.m., they completed their preparations with passionate, angry sex. It was one of the best nights they had spent together in a long time. It's been a busy 2 weeks for Bob. He had a lot to think about. It was all a test of intuition. Win or lose, Bob couldn't have come up with a better plan. He felt sad as he finished his preparations. Bob and Mindy sent the kids to church camp for 3 weeks. It was Thursday, and Bob was due back at work on Monday. Bob finished around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By 4, Bob had become an evil sexual villain towards Mindy. In addition to sleeping, eating, and going to the toilet, they had sex. It was early Friday evening. Mindy, of course, was home alone when the doorbell rang. Mindy was dressed like a housewife. She opened the front door. Richard stood there, very confident. Mindy pulled herself together. She gathered her inner strength. She slammed the door in Richard's face. She locked the front door and bolted it. She leaned against the door, thinking about Richard. He was a wizard in bed. Richard knocked on the front door for almost 20 minutes before walking around the house looking in the window. When he walked up to the window of his son-in-law's new room and looked at it, a wide smile appeared on his face. He started knocking on the window. Mindy either ignored him or didn't know he was there. He tried to catch Mindy's eye, but when he looked into her eyes, they were glassy and did not express any reconciliation with him. It was Friday evening. Bob was returning home from work. It's been a tough week for Bob. He found Richard, bribed him, and fired him like a guided missile aimed straight at Mindy. According to the plan, he did not look at the CCTV footage on his phone. It was hard for Bob not to look, but since he didn't, he still had a job. He drove up to his house. It was dark. Bob had a bad feeling. He unlocked the front door and entered. He turned on the light. No Mindy. Bob was crushed. Deep down, he really hoped that Mindy would be home. This is not true, so she must have left with Richard. She chose him over Bob and the children. Bob resigned himself to the bitter task of telling his children that their mother was no more. It was as if the entire planet Earth lay on his shoulders. Tired, he headed to his bedroom. He could barely put one foot in front of the other. Mindy looked at Bob and said, "Oh, Bean, glory God, you're home." 3-5. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. I spent most of the night tossing and turning, but sleep was elusive. The breeze flying through the open window brings with it the smell of the lake. I smell the freshness of the plants and the cloudy smell of lake water with a slight hint of fishy smell. I breathe deeply, sitting up in bed. Just as my head begins to clear in the pre-dawn darkness of early autumn, the phone rings. I love my iPhone. It is a miracle of technical wizardry that allows me to access and do things that would have been unimaginable just 10 years ago. But this time, the sharp ringing, designed to be heard above the noise of the machines in the factory I operate, combined with the vibration setting that alerts me to the ringing, even when I can't hear it, has an unsettling effect. I press a button that only appears on the screen and the call connects. The trembling, sobbing voice, a caricature of its usual, rich resonance, strangely does not evoke the usual feelings, but I instantly recognize it. "Mark, are you in touch? I actually don't know where you are, but can you come home so we can talk? Mark, I can't live without you. I want us to get back to where we were. I love you. I've always loved you. I guess it just didn't seem obvious until you left and got involved with that horrible little bitch. I'm done with Todd. In fact, you finished him for me. But I called him. I told him it was the end, and I never wanted to see him again. I told him goodbye, and I meant it forever." She said it all in one breath. Then she froze, waiting for my answer. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, she began speaking again. Mark, damn it. I won't let you throw 25 years together into nothingness. I'm serious. I told him goodbye and I meant it. This time she was more persistent. There was desperation and a slight hint of madness in her voice. Finally, I answered her. The ice in my voice cooled and surprised even me. You should have called him back, I said icily. It's too late to say goodbye. I heard a series of sobs and the phone fell. I was about to hang up when I heard her start picking it up again. This time, there was even more desperation in her voice. It looked like the phone had been taken from her and someone calmer spoke. "Great job, Dad," she said. "You don't know what she's been through lately. She has lost a lot of weight. There are bags under her eyes. She had to be hospitalized for a while. Again, don't you have any feelings? I don't think he's in his right mind at all. I know it's not your fault. You gave her a chance, but you have to do something to make it easier for her." The woman who was now lecturing me over the phone at this indecent hour of the morning was my daughter. I felt sorry for her that she was caught between two fires, especially since she was part of the reason for all of this. But she was smarter than her mother and quickly learned her lesson. When my mother picked up the phone again and started ranting about forgiveness, I thought about how it all started. Just a few weeks ago, I thought I was one of the luckiest people on earth. Not in a religious sense, since I've never been particularly religious, but I thought I had everything a man could need. No, I'm not Bill Gates, but I'm the best Mark Brown I can be. I run a family manufacturing business that my father started over 50 years ago. Things were going well enough for me to make a more than comfortable living. I always made enough money to pay my bills and chose to reinvest the rest back into the business. I will receive a large sum of money when I decide to retire, whenever that may be. It was actually my father who started this practice. This was a great move because the business truly belonged to the family, not to him personally, and since he did not receive a fixed salary, he was able to leave his second wife almost nothing in their divorce. I've actually never thought of it that way. My father was something of a woman even at a late age. I've always been a family man. My wife and daughter are, or were the ones I loved the most and was proud of. Now everything is probably different. What I had to show off came back to haunt me like a restless wind, and the best times that are left behind come with a whistle. All the good times I had with Lori and Katie continue to flash through my mind as I consider each memory as an object. I turn them over, searching for lies in the cracks and cracks, as if I haven't lived them myself. And my daughter, she was the one who really brought me to the light that destroyed our family, so her desire to fix the situation did not come from a place of love or family. I remember when it all started. It was a Friday night. I was cutting the grass in our backyard. I usually did it on Saturday, but the next day I was going to a car show. Besides my wife and daughter, my favorite car was my 2009 Mustang GT. I just finished washing and waxing the car and put it in the garage to keep it out of the grass and dust. Katie, my 24-year-old daughter, pulled into our driveway and, after giving me a perfunctory hug, went into the house in search of her mother. After a short time, they came out into the kitchen and sat on our terrace, animatedly discussing some problem that Katie was facing. Katie has been married for the past couple of years to the most wonderful guy I could imagine. Eric was everything I wanted in a son-in-law. He obviously loved Katie, but he was good in other ways too. He paid his own way through college. After receiving his degree, he got a job and built a life with Katie. He didn't drink or be a party animal, and he shared housework with her. They had some financial problems that most young couples have, but nothing insurmountable. I watched Lori, my wife, and Katie from the corner of my eye as I rode the lawnmower around the large yard. I knew that at this stage of the game my presence was not necessary. Usually Katie would approach Lori, tell her what she needed and convince her to take her side. And then together they would come to me for money to buy what Katie wanted but couldn't afford. I knew I would probably end up giving them money. I could never say no to any of my girls, but they always needed to have that united front. However, this time the conversation seemed unusual. As I approached them on the lawnmower, they were so engrossed in their conversation that they seemed to have forgotten about me. As I got even closer, their voices were so loud that I heard them, and my world changed. "Catherine, how could you be so damn stupid?" Lori exclaimed. I realized that Katie had problems. Her mother only called her Catherine when she did something really bad. "Damn, Mom, it just happened," Katie said complainingly. "It's not the end of the world." Physically, there was almost no difference, but it was just more exciting. I don't even think about leaving Eric, but he can be so boring sometimes. He's your husband, Catherine. You have to think about it. This person loves you. He will do anything for you. If things are boring between you, then you should say so and do something to make things more interesting. I can't believe my daughter could be so stupid, Lori said. Oh damn, I thought. There is already trouble in paradise. They have only been married for 2 years. Mom, it's not a big problem. I just wanted to do it again, just to make sure. You know, Katie said, I turned off the lawnmower because I had a feeling that my little girl had done something that should have gotten her ass kicked. When the sound of the lawnmower died down, both angry women looked at me. Mark, try to talk some sense into your stupid daughter, Lori hissed. She went to a party last night while Eric was working late. She got drunk and apparently slept with some guy she met there. Damn, Mom, tell everyone. Why not? My daughter screamed. You and Daddy are still together, she said, and suddenly I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. My wife's mouth dropped open in surprise when she saw my reaction. And honestly, Katie continued, it was just one time and I was drunk. I just wanted to try it again when I wasn't drunk. This doesn't mean I'm trying to have a long-term affair like you had. And anyway, Dad forgave you for cheating on me. So maybe Eric would forgive me too if he found out. Who knows, it might even add spice to our relationship. Katie suddenly looked up at her mother, who had turned white as a sheet. Mom, are you okay? She asked stupidly. You look like you're having a heart attack or stroke or something. She turned to look at me and saw the pain and anger in my eyes. Lori suddenly came towards me and I stepped back. Mark, she began. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Just shut up and don't come near me. Lori, I said. What's going on here? Katie asked. Then she looked at me. She saw the pain and anger on my face. Dad, you didn't know, did you? So she lied to me about what she told you. Catherine, I said, remember that look on my face, because that's the exact same look Eric will have when you tell him what you did. And you need to go home now and tell him, because the longer this goes on, the worse it will get and the harder it will be for you to get him to trust you again. Mark, honey, we need to talk, Lori said. But Dad, if it hurts him as much as it hurts you, I'm not going to tell him, she said. Then you will definitely lose him, because it is always worse when you find out from someone else. And I swear to you, if you don't tell him, I will. Hell, maybe I'll call him when I get to where I'm going. Maybe we can take a lawyer together and get a discount. Why does Eric need a lawyer? Katie asked. Perhaps he also wants a divorce, I said. Mark, you're upset, Lori said. I know that, and damn upset is putting it mildly, I hissed. For most of my life, I treated you like a goddess. Name one thing you've ever wanted since we've been together that I didn't give you. Name something I haven't done for you. And now I find out that I am married to a cheater. And in the same spoiled conversation, I learned that my daughter is following in your footsteps. Mark, honey, I know I messed up. And I know how you feel right now, Lori said carefully. So you know I feel like a complete fool, right? I shouted. For years, I bragged about my family. I told people all over the country about my beautiful wife and daughter. You both were my purpose in life. You were the reason I worked so hard and broke my back. They both stood there, shocked by me. Not anymore, I said, lowering my voice. Years of working in business during a bad economy have taught me to adapt to economic waves. I have become a master at accepting my losses and moving on. This experience turned out to be invaluable then. It's good that you know how I feel right now, Lori, I said, so I don't have to explain it to you. Who is he? What difference does it make who he is? She asked, with tears running down her cheeks. Because I fucking want to know, I said. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to smash his damn ass, I said. Mark, he has a wife, she said, and they are not as stable as we are. They have all sorts of problems, and it's just. So you're saying we don't have any problems right now? I shouted. Both women retreated from my anger. I think they both thought I might hit Lori, and they were closer to the truth than they even suspected. I'm going to the Mustang Memories show tomorrow, I suddenly said, regaining my composure. Lori hesitated, then nodded. I know that, darling, she said. I'll go with you, and maybe during the trip we can talk. No, I answered sharply. You're not going anywhere with me. I'm not my father. I'm not like him. What does this have to do with us, dear? She asked. Don't call me darling or anything other than my name, I hissed. My father considered himself some kind of womanizer. He talked to a lot of women that he would have been better off staying away from. I don't hang out with libertines, so we won't go anywhere together. In fact, the next time we meet together will be in court, and... Mark, what are you talking about? Lori sobbed. I already told you I'm sorry. We need to talk about. Saying sorry is nonsense. This is not fourth grade, Lori, I hissed. And what we're doing now is the only conversation I intend to have. If we don't talk, we can't work this out, she whined. Mark, If you say sorry again, I'll hit you, I said. Everyone knows you're sorry. I'm sure by now, after all that screaming, even our neighbors know you're sorry, and they probably know why. Lori, we can't work this out. We're done, I said. After the auto show, I will file for divorce. You're not going because by the time I get back from the show, I want you to pack your things and move out of my house. No, she screamed loudly. Mark, I love you. I don't want a divorce. And I didn't want to be married to a cheater, I said. But this is what I have. I have to cope with what I have, just like you. No, we can work this out if you give me a chance, she began to cry. Lori, I gave you a chance. When I asked who he was, you didn't tell me. That means protecting him is more important to you than our marriage, so. But you, she interrupted. But it doesn't matter, I said. You were so worried about his damn marriage when you should have been worried about yourself and yours. You were a stupid bitch about this, like everything else. I'm going to sue him for ruining our marriage, so I'll still find out who he was. And in the trial, I will have his wife called into the dock to ask her how she felt when she learned about it. If they don't have money, I'll pay for her divorce to ruin his life even more. She looked at me again as if she didn't recognize me. And to tell the truth, she didn't really know me. Within a few minutes, I changed. Now, like I said, I'm going to finish cutting my damn grass, and then I'm going to the hotel for the evening. I'm coming back from my car show tomorrow, and I want you to get your ass out of my house. Mark, please, she whined as I started the lawnmower again. As soon as the engine began to purr, I stopped it. Catherine, remember what I said, I told her. You better say something to Eric, because if you don't, I will. Then I started the engine and drove away to finish cutting the grass. As I mowed the grass, I realized that this didn't make any sense. It seemed like the actions of a madman. But in those early hours after the discovery of Lori's infidelity, I was going crazy. My mind was spinning at the speed of light. My whole life turned out to be false. Nothing I had hoped for or worked for the past 25 years mattered because it was not real. Cutting the grass and driving to a car show may have felt like I was out of touch with reality, but in fact it was quite the opposite. My mind was trying to find some piece of normality to cling to. I needed a big chunk of routine to bring some order to my life. Lori and Katie screamed at each other for several minutes while I slowly circled the yard on the mower. Katie eventually got tired of yelling at her mother and left. Then Lori sat and looked at me for a very long time. Every time my circle brought me close to the terrace, she looked like she wanted to say something, but I never slowed down or even acknowledged her presence. When I was done, I put the mower in the garage and went upstairs to pack for the night and the next day. "Mark, can we please talk about this?" she asked with deaf ears. As I turned to leave the room, I stopped and looked around, hesitating, looking at her. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I take one last look at my home with you as a part of it, and with you as a part of my life," I said slowly. "We can fix this," she said, crying. "I know we can fix this if we try." "Not when only one of us wants to try," I said. My home in rural Ohio was only 30 minutes from the Michigan border and about 90 minutes from the Detroit area. The auto show I was going to was at Ford headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan. It was a great event. It showcased not only the Mustang, but everything Ford had to offer as a whole. Showing off my Mustang and checking out both Ford and third-party Ford products would help take my mind off my problems and allow me to think about everything calmly. Who knows, I might even stay and watch the NASCAR race at Miss on Sunday. As I thought about it, I realized that I would now have a lot more time on my hands. All the sacrifices I made over the years to make my family happy didn't matter in the end. While I was driving, I was lost in my memories again. I thought back to my early days in college when I first met Lori. I looked across the crowded party room and fell in love with her jet black hair and bright blue eyes. Like most people at our small Midwestern college, she wasn't from there. She spent most of the evening holding the hand of a big guy who barely seemed to pay her any attention. Then I noticed that he had disappeared, leaving her alone. I didn't care if they were in any relationship. The first thing that came to my mind was that I had a chance, and I wasn't going to miss it. I grabbed 2 beers and quietly made my way across the room until I was next to her. She looked up when I handed her one and then shook her head. "I don't drink," she said. "That's good," I admired. "Why?" she asked. "Sometimes I feel like I'm a fish out of water here. Everyone else is already half drunk." "That's good because I don't drink either, but I'll probably need both of these beers," I said. She looked at me as if I had said something strange, and her smile lit up the room. Her sadness turned to curiosity. "If you don't drink, why do you need 2 beers?" she asked. "That's quite a lot to drink in a short time." "I need at least that much to calm my nerves," I said. "What makes you so nervous?" she asked. "Standing next to the most beautiful woman on the planet has such an effect on me," I said. Her smile became even brighter. I could barely look at it. It was so bright. "Well, that's good to hear," she said. "It's a pity that not everyone thinks so. Unfortunately, you won't be here very long." "I would stay here as long as you let me," I said enthusiastically. "I wouldn't mind if you stayed around longer," she smiled. "But I'm not the one you need to worry about. I thought about a guy who is funny to call my boyfriend." "Well, if you laugh when you call him your boyfriend, maybe you need someone who will take you more seriously," I said. She started to smile, but the smile quickly faded and she closed her eyes and pursed her lips. "He's twice your size," she said. "And what?" I said. "And he's standing right behind you," she continued. I turned around and looked up at him. He was angry. I smiled and handed him the beer. He stared at me, then opened the lid, catching the edge of the lid on the countertop and slamming it with his powerful hand. He took a sip of beer and then burped loudly. He drank the entire beer in 2 large gulps, each accompanied by a loud burp, which obviously impressed his friends. "Why are you hanging around my girlfriend?" he asked angrily. "I must." "You know that's rude, don't you?" I asked, interrupting him. "You have no manners? It's a party after all." "What?" he asked. "I brought you a beer," I said. "Just politely bring me a beer in return." "Sorry," he said sullenly, then left to get a beer. I shook my head as he went to get a beer. See you later, he told her. She smiled at me again. If he can't find beer for me, give him this. I handed her the second bottle and left the party. In the following months, I spent a lot of time with her. Lori was sweet, soft-spoken, loyal, beautiful, and an overall wonderful girl. Why she stayed with Todd was a mystery to me. Todd was as big as a house and moved almost as slowly. He was a lineman on our football team. Like many college athletes, he dreamed of a career in professional sports. Women were all around him in case he actually made a career of it. Todd, for some reason, simply could not deny himself the pleasure. He also had a soft spot for blondes. Here he was in a relationship with one of the most beautiful women on campus, but he risked everything for any girl with blonde hair who walked by. I once saw him leave Lori to sneak behind a building with a woman who weighed about 200 pounds. The weird thing about it all was that Lori had the strangest outlook on life I've ever seen. She was smart, she was witty, but she took the easiest, almost idiotic classes that were offered at school. She didn't even have a major. One night when she called me to keep her company while Todd cheated on her, we talked. "You probably think I'm stupid or something," she said. "I sit here and talk to you night after night and you're too polite to say anything about it. But we both know he's out there cheating on me. I probably seem like some tragically stupid woman waiting for him." "I don't think you're stupid at all," I said. "Some of the things you do surprise me, but I never thought you were stupid. And I really don't mind him cheating on you." She looked at me strangely. "Why?" she asked. "I thought we were friends." "That's the problem," I said. "I want us to be more than friends, and I don't mind him cheating on you because it gives me more time to spend with you. And I hope that the more time we spend together, the more obvious it will become that I'm better for you." "Apart from me waiting for Todd, what else surprises you?" she asked, changing the subject. "Well, the classes you take," I said. "You're pretty smart, but you're taking mostly preparatory courses without any specific focus or program of study." She smiled. "I'm not a career woman," she said. "I know it's not the 19th century, but I just want to be the best housewife I can." I looked at her in surprise. "Do you think it's bad to be a good wife and mother?" she asked. "No, but I have two questions for you. If all you want is to be a housewife, why are you even here? And the second question is, if you want to be a housewife, why don't you take home economics or parenting classes?" "We had a plan from the very beginning. Once we started dating," she said. "Todd will become a professional football player. They earn millions of dollars. The problem is that he needs to be good at college football to do that. And to be good at college football, he has to go to college. So from the very beginning, I took the same classes as Todd to help him with his studies. It worked the same way as in school. He got excellent grades on his assignments, but failed most of his tests. Teachers thought he was just bad at taking tests or had test anxiety. They gave him extra assignments, and he barely scraped by with the minimum score to keep him on the team. Then he turns professional. We buy or build our beautiful mansion and live happily ever after. Yes, until he starts cheating with the maids, neighbors, your children's teachers, and any other woman he sees who has blonde hair," I said. "No," she said. "He's just having fun now. As soon as we get married, he will stop." Even though she said it, we both knew she didn't believe it. It was just something she hoped would happen. Perhaps this is what he promised her. "You deserve so much better," I said. Then something passed between us as we looked into each other's eyes, and the next thing I knew, we were kissing. It was the hottest and most passionate kiss I have ever experienced. And just as I started to really get into it, she pushed me away. "No," she said. "Lori, you need to start looking for someone who will love you for you. You deserve someone who won't put you second to sleep with some whale just because she has yellow hair and breasts that could fill a bucket," I said. "And you don't even have to look far to find it. He's right here in front of you." "So you prefer to just sleep with dark-skinned women, huh?" she asked. A tear appeared in the corner of her eye. "Lori, This is not about sex, I said. I never gave you any hints. Then what is this about? She asked sharply. Why is it that every time I look around you are next to me? What does it mean? If you don't want me around, all you have to do is say, I said. Just say the word and I'll leave. I'm here because, Lori, I love you. I've loved you from the moment I saw you at that party. I know my situation is hopeless, just like yours and Todd's, but that's love. It makes a person hope for the slightest chance. Even when the person you love is entangled in a relationship with someone who isn't right for them and doesn't deserve them. You just keep hoping that. What? She asked. Forget it, I said. I've had enough humiliation for tonight. As I was leaving, she called me. Mark, I'll see you tomorrow, won't I? She asked. That's the problem with love, I said. For some reason, she makes you feel like getting kicked is a good thing. See you tomorrow. And so the last 2 years of my college years passed. I spent all that time pinning and hoping, committing myself to a woman who was about to marry another guy. I've missed out on some solid opportunities along the way. I'm not a troll. During these 2 years, I had many opportunities to start relationships or even connect with other women. But most of these women suffered from the same deficiency. They just weren't Lori Potosky. It's strange, but in the end, everything worked out in my favor. At Christmas that year, before Lori went home, she gave me a Christmas present. It was just a bottle of cologne, but she told me to wear it for her. If it smelled like skunk shit, I'd still wear it with pride. Even stranger was the end of the school year. The last time we met before leaving home, I didn't even think about anything. I was excited about everything I was going to do this summer. I had already decided to work in the family industry to put into practice what I had already learned. But I was going to go camping and do a lot of other things I liked. I was just ready for a break. Lori didn't seem as excited about going home for the summer. But the last time I saw her, I was shocked. We were supposed to be separated for only 3 months, but she did not want to let go of my hand. Don't wear my cologne for other women in the summer, she told me. I promised her, feeling my heart break. I'm going to miss you so much, she said. I think I saw tears in the corners of her eyes. It's only 3 months, I said. I want to see what kind of engineer I can be. So I'll work hard and bring a lot of money so we can do more fun things while you wait for Todd in the fall. It's too long, she said. Time will fly by, I said. Damn it, Mark, she said. I think I love you too. Why does life have to be so difficult? She started crying and slipped something into my hand and then ran away. I was so stunned by her confession that she loved me too that my brain just stopped working. After she left, when I looked at my hand, I noticed that she gave me a piece of paper with her phone number on it. It said, "Call me." And I called. In those days, interstate calls were expensive. I think I spent about a quarter of the money I made over the summer on long-distance calls to Missouri. I later found out that I spent more time talking to her that summer than Todd did, and he lived right next door to her. When we returned to school in the fall, I was in for the biggest surprise of my life. I had just settled into my dorm when someone knocked hard on the door. I opened it and saw Todd. I don't think he was trying to outshine the sun, but he did. Todd trying to fit in my doorway was like standing in front of an eclipse. "Where have you been?" he asked. "Todd, whatever you think I didn't do it," I said. "I just arrived on campus today." "That's what I'm talking about," he said. "I haven't been able to do anything since we came here 3 days ago. I need you to do what you did last year," he said. "What did I do last year?" I asked. "You know, spend time with Lori to cover for me," he said. "This way I can go out and do what I do without worrying about someone hitting on her. I need to have as much fun as possible right now, because once we're settled and married, my only glory will be on the field. I owe you one, buddy. As soon as I sign my multi-million-dollar NBA contract, I'll tear you a piece, okay?" "Of course, Todd," I smiled. "I'm your boyfriend." He turned to leave. "Hey, Todd," I called. He smiled and turned to me. The NBA is basketball. Football is the NFL. About, he said. Which ones are cars? NHL, right? No, I said. Damn it, brother, he suddenly shouted. This idiot owes me money. He told me the NHL is nothing but hard left turns. This is NASCAR, I said. Todd walked away, muttering about how he was going to break his brother's ass. Less than 20 minutes later, Lori arrived. A lot changed in that last year. Lori and I spent almost every second together when we weren't in class. We kissed a lot. By the end of the school year, it was all about sex. Lori felt a lot of guilt about this, so I didn't press her. But every time we parted, I had to push her away from me. I want you so much, she told me. Kissing you is better than the time I had sex with Todd. I think if we had sex, it would be really great. You only had sex once, I asked. She nodded. I shook my head. I keep hoping that summer never comes, she said. But it will happen. The NFL draft begins in the next few weeks. Todd will be chosen, and then he and I will move away, and I will never see you again. I love you so much, Mark. My heart was about to burst. I felt the same way, but in a way I thought there was a bright side. I can find my own woman and survive this. But things tend not to work out or work out for the better. Todd wasn't drafted at all in the NFL. He didn't make it through the first, second, or third round. He wasn't chosen at all. His agent started calling teams, and no one showed interest. No one even wanted to fly out to him for an interview. He soon lost his agent and began calling teams himself. He showed up at the headquarters of some of the worst teams in the NFL and was rejected. He persuaded me to call one CFL team for him. I finally got through to the team's president of football operations in Ottawa. Hello, I'm calling on behalf of Todd Williams, I said. Who? The guy asked. He hung up before I could say